When the two armed helicopters arrived above Blizzard City, Zhang Yi stared outside the window cautiously. Sure enough, the city was currently under martial law, and soldiers with live ammunition were stationed everywhere. This confirmed the failure of the Heavenly God Team's operation. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Although he didn't have much contact with Deng Yuena, he still admired that guy's character. The armed helicopters landed safely without any mishap at the indoor airport, and seconds after, the doors were opened. Zhang Yi was the first to get out, followed by Liang Yu, then the rest of his entire team. At this moment, his first priority was to find Bailey Chongqing to inquire about the situation first. However, the moment the group got out of the armed helicopter, they saw more than a dozen Yenyun guards patiently waiting outside. One of them took the lead, and judging by his demeanor, he was probably a senior officer. "Welcome back, Mr. Zhang Yi. Thank you for your outstanding contribution in this battle. You killed 4 members of Eclipse Moon single-handedly and restored the dignity of our Jiangnan region. No, the entire Huashu nation." The officer's tone was full of admiration and excitement. As a senior member of the Yenyun troops, he certainly knew what happened in Jiangning Square and how difficult it was for Zhang Yi to complete this task, given that the captain of the famous god team only managed to accomplish a tiny fraction of what Zhang Yi did. When Mo Zhongning, Li Weihai, and Yuan Hao in the background heard this, they were totally stunned and completely speechless. And as they recall what they said earlier, they lowered their heads in embarrassment. Anyway, the officer glanced to the side, and a soldier immediately rushed over with a plate covered with white silk in his hands. In it were some black cards which looked like metal and synthetic materials. The officer took out a black card and handed it to Zhang Yi. "This is the points card you got from this operation. With this card, you can make purchases in Blizzard City and exchange various supplies at the headquarters. The total points you got from this operation were 420 million points. The value of points is similar to the currency before the end of the world. It's just that the price level is much higher than before the end of the world, so strictly speaking, the purchasing power of points is also stronger than the money before the end of the world." Zhang Yi's eyes lit up immediately. He took the points card, approached the Yenyun senior officer with a smile, and placed his arm around his shoulders. "With this thing, I can buy anything, right?" The senior officer simply whispered honestly. "Well, some materials such as weapons and equipment made with cutting-edge technology requires permission to purchase. However, judging from your achievements, most of the materials will be open to you." Zhang Yi smiled with satisfaction, excited about Blizzard City's weapons and equipment made with advanced technology. Especially, the battle suit he was currently wearing. "Where can I go to exchange these points for weapons and equipment? Is it the place where I received the weapons before?" Zhang Yi still smiled with satisfaction. "Yes, it is there. Your scorecard is of a high level, so you can open the corresponding supply warehouse, however, you can't go anywhere for now." Zhang Yi looked at him in surprise and asked if there was anything else. The officer replied, saying that they have received orders from the higher-ups that Zhang Yi can't leave yet, and he needs to stay in the designated area for the next period of time. Also, any action needs to be reported to the higher-ups. Everyone was bewildered. After all, this was equivalent to house arrest. Zhang Yi lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then a meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It seems that the defeat in this battle had had a huge impact on Blizzard City, so much so that the higher-ups want to control the situation and can only keep those of us who know the situation quiet for the time being. "Okay, as you wish." Zhang Yi did not refuse and cooperated with a smile. If he really wants to leave, no one can keep him anyway. And after all, space travel ignores all physical existence. The officer breathed a sigh of relief and gestured to the side. "Then please follow me." The 3 followed him to a black car as the others were naturally taken away by the medical department. Shortly after, they arrived at a new area which was in Area A. It was a place similar to a villa area, specifically a single-family villa with a small courtyard and a 2-story building. Looking at the entire Blizzard City, this place was also a top-level living space. The officer showed them a villa and indicated that they would be staying there temporarily. And if they need anything, they can contact the Yenyun soldiers around. "Anyway, I wish you a pleasant stay in the future." Zhang Yi nodded to him to express his gratitude as the officer got in the car and left the villa. Around the villa, however, there were 4 Yenyun guards with live ammunition guarding the 4 directions. They were to guard and monitor Zhang Yi if he tries to leave. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows and said lightly, "It seems that things have really gotten out of hand." Inside, Flower jumped on the sofa and immediately made herself at home. Liang Yu's expression at this moment was a little worried. Was the Jiangnan district placing them under house arrest after the contributions they just made? Why are they treating them like this? Zhang Yi shrugged. What else could it be? It must be because of the failure of this battle that the situation in Blizzard City has changed. and may even lead to a power struggle among the top leaders. Who knows? In short, as long as it does not threaten our safety, it doesn't matter. I don't care about other things. Based on his outstanding performance in this battle, the top leaders of Blizzard City will definitely try their best to win him over. Judging from the current treatment, Zhang Yi even thinks that they would try to make him a captain. If that proves to be true, then he has to find a way to refuse it when the time comes. It's really troublesome. He naively thought that he would be fine if he hid himself, but his witty mind, sharp insight, and powerful spatial ability could not be concealed. Zhang Yi covered his forehead, feeling a little helpless. Alas, being too good is also a kind of trouble. On the other hand, Liang Yu couldn't be as calm as him. After thinking for a long time, she told Zhang Yi about her desire to know the situation back at the shelter. Zhang Yi, should we call home and report that we are safe? I don't know what the situation in Tianhai City will be like now. Tell them so that they don't worry. Besides, I am more worried about one thing. Jiangning City is not far from Tianhai City. If Eclipse Moon escapes to Tianhai City, it will be impossible to defend it with their current strength. Zhang Yi didn't consider this point, because according to the intelligence he had obtained before, Eclipse Moon's goal was to go to the Central Plains area, not to stay on the coast. But he took out his satellite phone and made a call. The call, being encrypted, quickly connected as young Xin Xin's worried voice came through. Her tone was very urgent. Big brother, how are you in Blizzard City? We are almost scared to death. The explosion of the god of death of love in Jiangning City could be sensed even in Tianhai City. It even caused all of our electronic equipment to temporarily lose their functionality. Zhang Yi heard her worry and smiled. Don't worry, we are all fine. Is there anything unusual in Tianhai City recently? Yang Xin replied calmly at the other end. Still as calm as usual, nothing special. Nothing happening is the best news. In any case, Zhang Yi hopes that his base camp can remain peaceful. I have to tell you something, but you must remember to keep it a secret. It's fine if you're the only one who knows it. The others in the shelter don't need to know for the time being. Blizzard City's mission to defeat Eclipse Moon has failed, and their current situation or status is unknown. Tianhai City is very close to Jiangning City, so don't leave the shelter. If you find anything wrong, notify me immediately and hide in the underground basement. Also, warn Xiao Honglian and the others, but don't tell them about Eclipse Moon. Just tell them to be careful of everything around them and be ready to hide in their shelters at any time. With the safety level of the shelter, even if someone in Eclipse Moon escaped the god of death of love to Tianhai City, it would be impossible for them to break through in a short time. After listening to Zhang Yi's words, Yang Xin frowned slightly. Okay, I'll remember that, brother. In addition, I have also done some research on Eclipse Moon and found some very interesting information. I will send it to you after I sort it out. Surprise flashed across Zhang Yi's eyes as he replied curiously. Oh really? The Jiangnan district has also conducted some investigations on Eclipse Moon, but the results were limited. How did you do it? Big brother, what did the programmers in the Jiangnan district do for you to compare them with me? Even though they have the unique equipment advantages of the region, they are not at the same level as me in terms of technology. Zhang Yi smiled and agreed. That's true. After all, they all have iron rice bowls. And the world's truly top technical machine masters, especially hackers, almost never work in official institutions. Yang Xin was the best example. The two chatted casually for a while. And at the end, Zhang Yi didn't know why, but he subconsciously told her to pay attention to her safety and also remember to protect herself. Yang Xin smiled from ear to ear, and a strange blush appeared on her face. She was filled with joy to be missed by Zhang Yi. Big brother, did you call only Xin? Or did you call the others also? Zhang Yi took a moment to answer at the other end. Of course I called you first. I knew it. Big brother really loves Xin the most. However, the reason why she was the only one called was that Zhang Yi felt that only Yang Xin could handle this kind of news calmly. If it was Zhokir or the others, they would be frightened and anxious. Don't worry, big brother. Xin would neither let you down nor become a burden. She can protect herself. I have never regarded you as a burden. Xin is the best, and has always been a good helper to brother. Yang Xin nodded slightly. Well, thank you, brother. I have something else to do, so I'll hang up first. The two ended the call after saying their goodbyes. Yang Xin finally made a decision after the call. So, with long strides, she resolutely left the control room step by step. When she arrived at the medical room, Zhokir was there experimenting with her ability. Yang Xin pushed the door open and walked in. She had a smile on her face and determined look in her eyes. Sister, let's start the experiment. This request made Zhokir's face change. Have you thought about it? Xin, that experiment is very dangerous and extremely painful. Perhaps for humans, there is almost no more painful experience than this. Yang Xin Xin placed her hands behind her back and looked up at Zhou Qier with a playful smile. Sister, Xin Xin also hopes to have a stronger power to help her brother. So, let's get started. Zhou Qier saw Yang Xin Xin smile with a firm expression and understood her determination. Okay then. She sighed softly and took Yang Xin Xin to an operating table. Then, as Yang Xin Xin climbed and lay down on the operating table with a smile, Zhou Qier expressionlessly buckled her hands, legs and body with a restraining belt to prevent her from struggling in the next experiment. Throughout the whole process, Yang Xin Xin had a smile on her face, which was kind of comforting. Zhou Qier felt a little reluctant. She took a deep breath and reminded Yang Xin Xin for the last time. It's not too late to regret now. I'm really afraid that you can't bear this kind of pain. However, Yang Xin Xin slowly closed her eyes and stated for them to get started. Zhou Qier said nothing more. She knew in her heart that Yang Xin Xin's choice was correct. Although this method may not be effective according to their long-term research, the answer obtained from theory is that this experiment is worth trying. Zhou Qier pushed over a transparent shelf. It was an acrylic box that just covered Yang Xin Xin's head. After the device was installed, Zhou Qier connected a heart rate detection device to Yang Xin Xin. Looking at Yang Xin Xin, who closed her eyes and waited for the experiment to start, she rushed over to the device and pressed the button that opened the valve that's connected to the acrylic box in the water tank. The water began to flow into the acrylic box and quickly submerged Yang Xin Xin's head. Yang Xin Xin's face showed a painful look. She struggled hard, which was out of instinct. After more than a minute, her struggle weakened and her heart rate was also rapidly decreasing. Zhou Qier's eyes were fixed on the electrocardiogram. The electrocardiogram completely turned into a straight line. But Zhou Qier did not rush to drain the water from the acrylic box, but stared at Yang Xin Xin, then her watch. She was still waiting. 2 minutes passed, and there was no change in Yang Xin Xin's body. Zhou Qier quickly drained the water from the acrylic box and activated her ability. Then she placed her glowing green hands directly into Yang Xin Xin's chest. Holding her heart with one hand and her lungs with the other, she began to use her ability to help her do cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Not long after, Yang Xin Xin's heartbeat resumed. She struggled on the operating table and spat out a mouthful of water. However, she did not feel any changes in her body. Did the experiment fail? Yang Xin Xin's expression was a little lost. Zhou Qier reminded calmly, I have studied your cells, and they are indeed affected by gamma rays and have partially mutated. However, this phenomenon is common in most creatures after the end of the world, and it does not mean that you will definitely develop superpowers. So you need to be mentally prepared, although near-death experience is the best stimulation for the human body. If you cannot awaken your superpowers in this state, there are not many other means you can use. Zhou Qier looked at Yang Xin Xin's distressed state. In order to awaken her superpowers, she actually chose such a painful way. Originally, you could have an ice soul. Zhou Qier understood Yang Xin Xin's position in Zhang Yi's mind. A computer genius with a super brain, she should have been Zhang Yi's first choice to receive an ice soul. Yang Xin Xin looked at the shadowless lamp above her head expressionlessly. I have always believed that an ice soul awakening method is incomplete. Sister, have you forgotten the conclusion we came to from our analysis? What really determines the strength of a superpower should be the mind. When a person is on the verge of death, the obsession in their heart through their thoughts will turn into their ability after awakening. The stronger the obsession of dying, the stronger the superpower will be. The abilities you three have obtained are all auxiliary, which confirms my thoughts, and if I want to get a more powerful ability, I must use this method. To make my own mind reach the extreme. This is why Yang Xin Xin refused to use an ice soul in the first place. She has her own ideas. She wants to make herself a unique existence around Zhang E. Zhou Qier took a deep breath and tried to reason with her once again. Even if you don't have superpowers, you can still help Zhang E very well. Yang Xin Xin shook her head. That's different. After all, no one is considered fragile if their abilities are too strong. And she also understood that in Zhang Yi's mind, she would always be that weak little girl who needed protection. Zhang Yi didn't know that she also hoped to face all kinds of dangers with him, fighting side by side. Zhou Qier reached out to untie the restraints on Yang Xin Xin, but she coldly told her to proceed. Zhou Qier's hand froze in midair. She was shocked and couldn't even speak. The feeling of being on the verge of death was something no one wants to experience. But this cousin of hers actually plans to do it again? Yang Xin Xin looked at a visibly stunned Zhou Qier and said with a smile, Aren't you here with me? I won't really die. But next time, I suggest you wait a little longer. Let me feel the despair of death. Maybe it will be more effective. Zhou Qier stared at her cousin in front of her. and her body began to tremble slightly because of fear. This cousin of mine is so scary. But she couldn't refuse Yang Xin Xin's request, so she could only be cruel and start the second round of experiments. With her, Yang Xin Xin would not die. But the taste of crazy testing on the edge of death countless times would make your scalp numb just thinking about it. Meanwhile, after the remaining troops of the Eclipse Moon left Jiangning City, they returned to Linhai City. Although they defeated the God Squad and killed Deng Shintong in their recent battle, they also suffered heavy losses. Even when they had encountered powerful enemies back in Kanto, this development of Eclipse Moon was truly unprecedented. But every time back then, they were saved with the help of Mayumi Takeuchi. This group of people returned to the icebreaker they hid in the harbor and slowly left the shore. Led by Fengguangyu and Jin, the remaining 8 people silently mourned in the direction of the land. Even though they were just a group of desperate people who were temporarily formed, the friendship of the journey together had been real, so they mourned the 5 deaths from the bottom of their hearts. After the mourning, Fengguangyu and Jin put on his gray newsboy cap and stated with a smug look, "This battle was beyond our expectations." And Mayumi's prediction was also affected, but overall we won. Next, we need to create a massive unrest for them. Then take the opportunity to negotiate with the Jiangnan region. Hearing this, Mayumi Takeuchi's eyes was a little downcast. She lowered her head and apologized regretfully. "I'm sorry everyone. They died mainly because of me. I didn't do my duty well and something went wrong with my divination." Fengguangyu and Jin heard this and hurriedly turned towards her, smiled and gently held her soft shoulders. "Mayumi, this is not your fault. It was expected that Hanakio would get into trouble. You wanted to save her, but none of us expected that the captain of the God team would suddenly appear around the base camp. However, the death of Kamaya and the others were somewhat strange." Fengguangyu and Jin's eyes flashed with a hint of darkness. Those 4 people were important fighting forces, and now they have all been killed, which has some impact on them. At this time, Jinguji Saikairo pushed his glasses and said coldly, "Among that group of people, I met a very dangerous guy." Everyone looked at Jinguji Saikairo with a curious look. "Dangerous guy? What kind of dangerous guy? Is he more dangerous than Deng Shintong?" Fengguangyu and Jin asked with narrowed eyes. "No, it's a completely different feeling." Jinguji Saikairo recalled what happened that day, and for some reason, he felt a chill ran down his spine. Kamaya Negemichi and Shinichiro Akutsu were both killed in a state of serious injury. But no matter how serious their injuries were, they could not be killed by bullets. He was a very powerful user of space-related abilities. Not only did the bullets he fired possess a power far beyond that of an ordinary person, he could also directly devour 2 of my Shikigami. As soon as these words came out, everyone present showed a serious expression. After all, Jinguji Saikairo was also at the forefront of their Eclipse group in terms of combat power, especially his Shikigami. They all have extremely powerful strength, each of which is no less than a Delta-level mutant. So if a marksman with a space-related abilities can restrain Jinguji Saikairo's ability, then he was obviously of a high level. Subsequently, Tsukamoto Nobunaga calmly added, "I seem to have some impression of the guy you just mentioned. He was one of the people pursued by Nanako Agatsuma and Takizawa Takashi. I think they probably died at his hands." Obviously, everyone was shocked. In other words, 4 of their 5 dead teammates were killed by the same person. Who is this guy? Fengguangyu and Jin thought of Mayumi Takeuchi's performance during the battle, and his expression was terribly serious. Could this guy be the one who made Mayumi's prophecy invalid? After connecting various clues, things became clear. Mayumi Takeuchi's prophecy could not predict everything about that person. Even in her prophecy, the characters with normal trajectories would have their fates changed once they intersected with this marksman. He is a person outside of fate, Mayumi Takeuchi murmured. In the next operation, if this person is involved again, we will be in a very passive position. Unless we find a way to kill him, Fengguangyu and Jin reassured her. Don't worry, I still want to know more about him first. There will be a chance to kill him later. The icebreaker slowly left the coast and headed towards the southern waters. Meanwhile, a few days had passed and Zhang Yi was still under house arrest. Inside the villa, he took out the bodies of the 4 members of the Eclipse group he killed from his alternate space. These 4 people were all elite Delta level. If he absorbed their power, he will definitely become stronger. Zhang Yi crouched down and put his hand on the forehead of one of the corpses, his eyes full of expectations. Shortly after, that familiar feeling appeared and the co-devouring process was initiated. But this time, that refreshing feeling did not appear. He did absorb some power, but the overall feeling he got was not much improved. What's going on? Zhang Yi didn't understand what was happening in front of him. In fact, this phenomenon had already appeared before. When he killed the mutants in Days City, he absorbed their essence, but he felt that his ability was almost not improved. He originally thought that their strength was too weak, but at the moment, the Eclipse Moon member he absorbed was not a weakling. But the effect after absorption was still minimal. Could it be that I have reached a bottleneck? Such an idea suddenly emerged in his mind. And as he thought it over, he also felt that it was very reasonable. If mutants can devour and evolve infinitely, then everyone will become a mutant with no upper limit. This incident shows that the ability of co-devouring also has its upper limit. If Zhang Yi wants to evolve again, he must devour more powerful mutants. It is indeed like this, but this is not a bad thing. At least in this way, there will be no gap between me and the investigation captains in Blizzard City who have a lot of resources and are fully trained by the top management. Looking at the other 3 corpses on the ground, Zhang Yi thought for a while and called Flower and Liang Yu over. Rather than devouring it and not getting much improvement, it was better to improve the combat power of those around him. Liang Yu was surprised by this gesture and felt extremely grateful, but Flower, like a true boss, didn't give a shit about that. Unexpectedly, she only managed to devour one, while Liang Yu swallowed the essence of the other 2 easily. However, she was very satisfied with it and even let a heavy sigh. You see, the essence of these mutants were very powerful for her to digest in a short time. But the same couldn't be said about Liang Yu. Zhang Yi saw the disappointed look on her face and knew she didn't evolve to her expectations. The foundation of a martial arts master is too deep after all, and he doesn't know what level she would evolve to in the future. Flower too, for that matter. Zhang Yi decided to call Bailey Chongqing and ask what the new direction of the regional top management was. However, he couldn't get through to him. He guessed that he's also probably dealing with the aftermath of the battle too. Anyways, Zhang Yi decided to use this leisure time to study the information about the Eclipse group sent by Yang Xin Xin. Of course, this information was very different from what Blizzard City gave them. It's more detailed and their abilities were extremely well explained. When Zhang Yi turned to the information named Takeuchi Mayumi, his fingers that were flipping through the information stopped. Mayumi, a novice ancient shrine maiden, the 126th generation descendant of the Takeuchi family. Her ancestor was Takeuchi Suken, an official in the Muriai era, and this title was passed down from generation to generation. The person who inherited the name of Takeuchi Suken had the same duties as the historian of Huashu. However, the way of recording history was not in writing, but by word of mouth and was engraved in the mind. In later generations, the position of Takeuchi Suken disappeared, but the duties of the Takeuchi family have always been upheld. Each generation of descendants will strictly follow the group training and engrave the history of Japan. It's interesting that this job is passed down from generation to generation. But according to the conclusion of superpowers, if everyone's superpowers are related to their obsessions, then shouldn't this person's superpower be her memory? Impossible. This ability is useless then. Or the Takeuchi family. Could it be a book of prophecy? Such a bold idea emerged in Zhang Yi's mind. Zhang Yi's expression became serious as a chill ran down his spine. So, the most terrifying person in the entire Eclipse group is not their team leader Fengguang Yuanjin, but this Takeuchi Mayumi. She is the real core of Eclipse Moon. He thought this idea was extremely reasonable. After all, the other party, comprising of just ordinary civilians, somehow managed to grasp a comprehensive control of the battlefield throughout the previous 2 battles. They were fighting in a foreign land, and they neither have any powerful equipment nor assistance, yet they always seems to be at the right place at the right time with the right people. And they surprisingly managed to defeat the coalition forces of Blizzard City almost as if nothing could go wrong for them. This is basically a cheat system which could even rival the level of Epsilon on the battlefield with unlimited roles and functions. However, if the ability of the Shrine Maiden is something similar to prophecy, then why didn't she react when I killed 4 of them one after another? Thinking of this, Zhang Yi couldn't help pacing back and forth in the room. Could it be that they couldn't grasp all the details of the future? Or were their attention focused on the Celestial Squad at the time, so they ignored his existence? No, they couldn't distinguish our identities back then, so that can't be it. But then again, if the opponent can really see through the future and plan everything, how the hell did I manage to completely break this ability? Zhang Yi couldn't help but fall into deep thought, with numerous speculations boggling his mind endlessly. He felt that understanding this situation could be the most critical means to eliminate Eclipse Moon. Zhang Yi was suddenly interrupted by an email sent by Lan Xinqing, informing him to come to the operations center early the next day. Unexpectedly, during his house arrest, the complete defeat of the Heavenly God team somehow managed to spread throughout the entire city, causing public outcry and panic. Anyways, after a meeting between Zhu Zhang and Deng Yuena, then among all the higher-ups, it seems like they have figured out a solution. So, early the next day, Zhang Yi and Bailey Chongqing, who had received the news, came to the operations center. The two met in the lobby on the first floor. Seeing Bailey Chongqing, Zhang Yi immediately understood the situation as Bailey Chongqing showed him a bitter smile. At the beginning, the two of them worked together to deceive the Jiangnan region and prevented the district's top leaders from knowing Zhang Yi's strength. But their lies were probably laid bare after the battle. And from this aspect, the district will definitely hold Bailey Chongqing accountable. Zhang Yi was fine though, mainly due to the fact that he wasn't from Blizzard City. So even if Zhu Zhang blames him, he could only scold him verbally, but could not impose any substantial punishment. After all, concealing one's strength is not a fault. But as for Bailey Chongqing, a captain of an investigation team, this behavior was hard to say. The crime can be big or small, and it all depends on Zhu Zheng's mood. Lan Xinqing personally came downstairs to greet the two. She had a polite attitude, probably because she was a civil servant. But Zhang Yi didn't like this lady very much, and the reason was simple. She was the kind of person you notice at a glance that she's intrusive and pretends to be smart, making her a pain in the ass to deal with. Although he thinks her pretense is a little funny, he also knows that a truly smart person is often talented inside and not outwardly sharp. Lan Xinqing made a light gesture and calmly stated, "You two, please follow me. Zhu Zhang has been waiting for you for a long time." Bailey Chongqing hesitate for a moment before joining Zhang Yi as the two follow behind silently. Shortly after, they came to Zhu Zheng's office and entered. Lan Xinqing did not enter, but closed the door behind them. Inside, Zhu Zhang was sitting at his usual spot, behind the mahogany table, his hands folded to support his chin, and behind him on the side was his personal guard Sun Lushuan. Bailey Chongqing stood beside Zhang Yi with a stern face, but his nervousness was evident to see. Obviously, the atmosphere in the office was a little tense at this moment. Zhu Zhang raised his head and stared at them. Then in a deep voice, he told the two to take a seat. Zhu Zheng's eyes were directly on Zhang Yi the moment the two sat down across from him. "Zhang Yi, you have made great contributions in this battle to suppress Eclipse Moon. This is surprising to me. I didn't expect that there would be such a powerful mutant from any outer city." Zhu Zheng smiled and pointed a finger right at Zhang Yi. "You hit it really well, young man." As he said that, he glanced at Bailey Chongqing next to him and continued that it was so well hidden that their district's investigation team didn't even notice. This statement was unexpected and a way out for Bailey Chongqing, but he felt a little blocked in his throat, wanting to explain something, but not knowing how to start. Zhang Yi saw this and spoke up to relieve his pressure. After all, he owes him that much. Even a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. I keep some means of saving my life in order to survive well in the end of the world. I hope Zhu Zhang can understand. Zhu Zhang agreed with this assessment. "You are right, you are indeed cautious enough and able to hide well. This is an excellent quality. If you are on the battlefield, soldiers like you are most likely to survive to the end." Hearing this, Bailey Chongqing noticed how sly this old fox really is. "Didn't you always say that Zhang Yi only knows how to defend and his style of play was too steady? He puts his own interests first and isn't qualified to be a soldier. Seriously, Commander, it turns out you change your mind faster than turning the pages of a book." Anyway, facing Zhu Zheng's praise, Zhang Yi acted very calm. Such nice words should not be taken seriously, or who knows what Zhu Zhang will ask him to do later. It was better to play it safe. "You are too kind. My strength is still far behind the elites of Blizzard City. Especially compared with professional soldiers, my combat quality is still far behind." Hearing this, Zhu Zhang couldn't help but think of the members of the God Squad who died in the battle. It's better not to mention this matter. The result of that battle made me see many things clearly. He suddenly sighed, and his eyes became erratic. In the context of the Great Mutation era, the role of ordinary soldiers is getting weaker and weaker, even to the point where high-level mutants are fighting. No matter how excellent an ordinary soldier is, no, even a low-level mutant can hardly influence a battle situation. In other words, the advent of a new era represents the emergence of a new form of warfare. This battle has taught all of us a lesson. Top mutants and intelligence are the 2 things that determines the outcome of a battle. Zhu Zhang felt regretful as he continued. "We were too arrogant before, and we were still immersed in the advantages of having a large number of people and fighting on the home ground. If this kind of thinking is not changed in time, we will suffer an unimaginable loss in the future. This is the form of war in the new era. Mutants will become the most crucial piece on the battlefield, far beyond hot weapons, perhaps second only to the god of death of love. That is the last bit of face in the era of hot weapons." So, Zhu Zhang put his hands on the table, his eyes fixed on Zhang Yi's face. "Our revenge will be led by mutants, high-level mutants to be precise. Also, I have decided to give you the initiative on the battlefield. So Zhang Yi, I hope you can lead the team to carry out the next mission." The air suddenly became quiet as Bailey Chongqing turned his head slightly in Zhang Yi's direction, his face full of shock. The encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon, such a high-level mission, was actually handed over to Zhang Yi, a mutant from the outer city, to lead. He couldn't believe his ears, but after a brief consideration, he realized it was their best option. Blizzard City has entered a stage where no one was available. The two major investigation teams have been injured and lost their peak combat power. And Zhang Yi, who solo-killed 4 members of Eclipse Moon, has become the most suitable candidate. This is somewhat ironic. Zhang Yi remained silent because he was thinking of a way to escape this responsibility. He knew this old guy would let him go to the battlefield, but he didn't expect to lead the charge. This burden was very heavy and came a little too fast, especially for someone who doesn't like to lead a team of unfamiliar people who would be dragging their feet. I don't think I am capable enough to take on such a heavy responsibility. You should find someone else to do it. Blizzard City is not short of excellent talents. Zhu Zhang looked at him meaningfully. You are right, but you have an ability that no one else has. And it also happens to be the Eclipse Group's biggest weakness. Zhang Yi stared at Zhu Zhang and was a bit curious if he'd guessed right. Before he could ask, Zhu Zhang explained. Although our losses were extremely heavy this time, we also gained enough information after paying the price. Not only did we learn more about their abilities, but we also figured out the most critical person on the other side. Zhu Zhang pressed his hands on the table and got on his feet. We have been thinking wrong all along. Fengguangyu and Jin was not the core of Eclipse Moon at all. Their core is the priestess with the ability to predict the future, Mayumi Takeuchi. Hearing this, Zhang Yi knew he'd guessed right. Zhu Zhang continued. We have figured out her abilities. She has some kind of predictive ability, which can help her see through the future to a certain extent. Because of this, they can send the most appropriate people to deal with every action we take. This ability alone has weakened our strength by at least 30%. Even when we used the god of death of love, we couldn't wipe them out. Zhu Zhang is still a little frightened at the thought of Mayumi Takeuchi predicting the launch of the god of death of love a few minutes before he even had that idea. Stunned and a little bit confused, Bailey Chongqing questioned. But this doesn't make sense. If she can really predict the future, why was Zhang Yi able to kill 4 of them? Zhu Zhang replied decisively. We found that their actions have absolute initiative in almost all battlefields. But the appearance of one person disrupted the opponent's predictive ability. Zhu Zhang stared down at Zhang Yi with burning eyes, as if he had discovered a rare treasure. As long as Zhang Yi is there, her predictive ability becomes invalid. This is why I hope you can lead the team and take charge of this mission. Zhu Zhang leaned down and asked seriously word by word. Zhang Yi, at this time, I hope you can be honest with us. What means did you use to crack her predictive ability? Zhang Yi sighed and looked at Zhu Zhang's questioning eyes with clear eyes. I don't know either. In fact, when I started the mission, I noticed something was wrong. I don't understand why I am special. This is a lie, of course. Zhang Yi had actually vaguely guessed the truth of the matter. You see, the ability to predict, in other words, is a weapon of causality. It relies on a predetermined fate. So, the moment Zhang Yi died, his predetermined fate also ended. But for some unexpected reason probably related to his undeveloped abilities, he was reborn, directly making him a person outside of fate. In other words, Zhang Yi should be a dead person at this point in the original timeline, so his present and future involvements are no more recorded in the original timeline, hence cannot be predicted. The ability to predict the future has lost its effect on him the moment he was reborn, making his current existence sort of a unique exception in the timeline. Zhu Zhang saw Zhang Yi's reluctance and frowned slightly. He knew the Eclipse Moon must be eliminated at all cost. Only by eliminating them can there be peace and happiness. But Zhang Yi was clearly not going to show his hand until he saw the rabbit. If there was no benefit, why would he agree to take on such a big task? Zhu Zhang pointed at him and said decisively, for this operation, I plan to integrate the remnants of the Heavenly God team with the Black Robe team to form a new team named Tengu. The purpose of this team is to completely eradicate the Eclipse Moon. And you, Zhang Yi, if you are willing to become the captain of this team, you can have the rights and resources of the captain of this investigation team, so how about it? Zhang Yi barely contained his urge to laugh out loud at the ridiculous name given to the new investigation team. Apparently, the new name meant doglicker. He mocked the idea of leading such a team even if it's given as a gift. After all, who would want to be a captain of a dog-licking team? On the other hand, Bailey Chongqing's mood was extremely dejected. Zhu Zhang didn't even ask for his opinion before deciding Zhang Yi as the new captain. In other words, he was a captain for less than a month, and it was gone in the blink of an eye. However, during this period of time, he clearly felt that he did not have the strength to be a captain. And other people never regarded him as a captain either. This is a very cruel and realistic world. People without strength are naturally not valued. Zhang Yi was unmoved when he heard this. He folded his arms and said calmly, "Sorry, but this matter has no appeal to me. I'm not interested in being a captain of an investigation team." Zhu Zhang thought Zhang Yi probably doesn't know the benefits of being a captain of an investigation team. In the entire Jiangnan region, a captain of an investigation team has great privileges. Except for a few senior officials, they have the greatest authority. If you become the captain of an investigation team, you will have supreme power and reputation. You can be admired by thousands of people and become a hero. Unexpectedly, Zhang Yi's face was not moved at all. He just smiled faintly and casually stated that becoming a hero is something he had no interest in. Reputation, power, these things doesn't pique my interest at all. I just want a stable life and rich materials and spiritual enjoyment. But I don't lack those things. Sun Lushuan's eyes showed a look of astonishment. He smiled at Zhang Yi and nodded silently. It is rare for a young man to be able to look down on fame and fortune so lightly. Zhu Zhang also fell into a brief silence. If Zhang Yi doesn't care about these things, what else can impress him? However, Zhang Yi took the initiative to speak. "I'm still okay with lending a hand in dealing with Eclipse Moon. But don't let me be the captain. I prefer to act alone. At most, I will cooperate with you. But I am not good at commanding." Zhang Yi really hates to be associated with a bunch of burdens. "So that's what you think?" Zhu Zhang took a deep breath, quite satisfied. Zhang Yi did not refuse to join the next encirclement and suppression operation. However, he did not quite understand why young people nowadays are so resigned. Why was Zhang Yi unwilling to take the opportunity of promotion with unrestricted privileges, and the opportunity to make a name for himself? Zhu Zhang rubbed his stubble chin. "But, except for you, there is no one else more suitable for this position right now. After all, we have to integrate the two major investigation teams, so the position of captain is not something that anyone can take on. The most important thing is that he must be strong enough." Zhu Zhang really did not have a better candidate. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed a mutant from the outer city to briefly take the position of captain of the Tengu team. Zhang Yi smiled slightly. "Anyway, please think about this matter carefully. I believe there will be someone more suitable than me to take this position." Zhang Yi sees the captain's position as the scapegoat status. If something goes wrong, everyone will come to the captain. Zhu Zhang's expression was a little tangled, but after thinking for a while, he smiled and said, "Okay, I will think about this matter carefully. However, as long as you are willing to join the Tengu team, it will be a good thing. You can also go back and think about it carefully. If you change your mind, this position can be reserved for you at any time." Zhang Yi leaned forward and suddenly said to Zhu Zhang with a smile, "If you want me to conquer Eclipse Moon, then shouldn't my supplies be unlimited?" Zhang Yi had no intention of working in vain. He would be a bastard if he didn't take advantage of this opportunity. Zhu Zhang smiled at the request. "Of course, you can choose any weapon you like. If you like it, you can take it." At this time, Sun Lushuan whispered in Zhu Zhang's ear, "Commander, he is a space-based mutant." Zhu Zhang's face froze when he realized what he just said. Good lord. His thoughtless words almost cost him the entire property of Blizzard City. "On second thought, you can make a list of supplies and I'll have someone send them to you." Zhang Yi sighed when he saw his plan fall through. "Well, that's fine. We can talk about supplies later. I just hope I can be equipped with a batch of top-notch equipment, especially the close-fitting battle suit. I want to get a few more sets." The battle suit left a deep impression on Zhang Yi, so he was very eager to get it. Zhu Zhang folded his arms and asked curiously, "You want so many sets? Do you want to give them to your friends?" Zhang Yi nodded. "Yes, I should be able to get one set myself, right? I can exchange the others with my points." "Is that possible?" Bailey Chongqing heard this and hurriedly reminded him. "Zhang Yi, those things are the highest technical secrets of Blizzard City and cannot be circulated to the outside world." Unexpectedly, Zhu Zhang agreed. "Why not? It's just a few sets of uniforms. You can exchange them for as many as you want." Zhu Zhang stared at Zhang Yi a bit amused. In order to avenge the previous shame and eliminate Eclipse Moon, he can meet almost all of Zhang Yi's conditions. As long as Zhang Yi can crack the other party's causal means and is willing to join Tengu, Zhu Zhang knows how to win people's hearts and make people work hard for him. A very critical point is that you must never be stingy. Zhang Yi waved his hands hurriedly. "Hey, I just said that I will participate in this operation. But it doesn't mean that I agree to join Blizzard City. I'm still used to staying in my nest." Zhu Zhang said with a smile. "That's easy to say. Don't rush to make a decision. The most important thing at the moment is to solve the problem of Eclipse Moon. As long as Zhang Yi can help him deal with Eclipse Moon, Zhang Yi can even call him Big Brother. Well, if there is nothing else, can I leave first?" Zhang Yi was in a hurry to exchange his points for a few sets of battle suits. The one he wore before was secretly lent to him by Bailey Chongqing, and he returned it a long time ago. Now he wants to get his own set quickly. Zhu Zhang smiled and nodded. Of course, Bailey Chongqing will accompany you. By then, you can also meet a very special person today. Hearing this, Zhang Yi and Bailey Chongqing looked at Zhu Zhang curiously. A very special person? How special? Zhang Yi couldn't help but be more curious. Zhu Zhang said seriously, "For this operation, we have learned from the experience of the last time. We will never underestimate the strength of the opponent again, and will use an absolutely superior force to fight against them. That's why I contacted several other investigation teams that were on missions outside." Zhang Yi's eyes condensed. Is another investigation team going to appear? Bailey Chongqing curiously asked which investigation team decided to join them. Zhu Zhang smiled lightly and replied calmly, "The Samsara team." As soon as these words came out, Bailey Chongqing's face suddenly lit up with joy. Obviously, there was someone in the Samsara team that he had a good relationship with. Great. If it's them, our chances of winning would be much better. Zhu Zhang agreed with a raised finger and a smile. The other teams were all carrying out important missions and had no time to come back. Conveniently, only Samsara had just finished their mission in the north. So they immediately rushed back as soon as they received my news. When the time comes, your two teams will join forces and you will definitely be able to wipe out Eclipse Moon in one fell swoop. Zhang Yi scratched his cheek nervously, not knowing what to say. Besides a brief introduction and names of the other investigation teams, he knew nothing about them. Well, I will cooperate with them well. Zhang Yi was a little curious about the Samsara team, but at present he was in a hurry to exchange items, so he said goodbye to Zhu Zhang and left the office. Bailey Chongqing also stood up, wanting to leave, but Zhu Zhang stopped him. The moment Zhu Zhang called out Bailey Chongqing's name, the smile on his face suddenly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye, and finally returned to that cold and stoic face. Bailey Chongqing swallowed hard, feeling very nervous. Zhu Zhang stared deep into his eyes, making his blood run cold. Seize this opportunity and don't let it happen again. Bailey Chongqing instantly understood what he meant. Zhu Zhang was not a fool to figure out that he had teamed up with Zhang Yi to deceive the high-level officials of the region. The reason why he was not punished now is because Blizzard City is in need of people. But if he does not seize the opportunity to perform well in the future battle against Eclipse Moon or makes the same mistake again, he will definitely be punished by the military court. Yes, thank you, General Zhu. Bailey Chongqing stood up straight like a thick pillar, grateful for the second chance. When he left Zhu Zhang's office, he let out a long breath. His face was a little pale, but his heart was relieved a lot. He had managed to get through this stage temporarily. Zhang Yi was not far away. He was leaning against the wall and looking at him calmly. This matter has nothing to do with him, and he also knows that Zhu Zhang will not punish Bailey Chongqing at this time. After all, he was in need of people, and his earlier actions proves this. Are you okay? Zhang Yi asked. Bailey Chongqing straightened his back and pretended to be calm as he walked to Zhang Yi's side. It's nothing, Zhu Zhang just encouraged me and told me to work hard. Hearing this, Zhang Yi didn't expose him. After all, Bailey Chongqing was a middle-aged man, and he still wanted to save face. Come on, let's go exchange your points for weapons. Zhang Yi stated his desire for the battle suit for now. The rest can wait. After all, he had no shortage of daily necessities. In the warehouse of Blizzard City, only the weapons with cutting-edge technology could make him excited. Bailey Chongqing tilted his head in Zhang Yi's direction and asked calmly, "Well, the points required for exchange are quite high. Are you sure you want to exchange them all?" Zhang Yi just replied casually, "Except for that, I don't need anything else for the time being." Besides, he smiled slyly, "If we really have to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon, weapons and equipment can be taken at will, right? I don't believe Zhu Zhang will be stingy with weapons." Bailey Chongqing was a bit speechless. "You are really calculating." But before Zhang Yi can act smug, Bailey Chongqing added mysteriously, "It seems you still underestimate the region's heritage. The real good things are not what you see." Bailey Chongqing's words aroused Zhang Yi's curiosity. "What do you mean? If you have something to say, just say it directly. I hate guessing riddles." Zhang Yi stated, a bit dissatisfied. Bailey Chongqing gave a knowing smile. Indeed, weapons made of adamantium and close-fitting combat suits made of nanoparticle materials are all good stuff. But those things are external objects after all. They can only enhance our basic combat effectiveness. But they can't increase our upper limit. Zhang Yi had already understood something at this time. Are you talking about genetic drugs? Zhu Zhang once used that small box of temptation to fool the mutants in the outer city, saying that it was compound number 2 that could enhance superpowers. Logically speaking, that kind of thing should also be on the exchange list. However, Zhang Yi didn't dare to use that thing easily. Bian Junhua's demise was still vivid in his mind. Although his strength was improved to an extremely powerful level shortly after the end of the world, it also requires a huge price. Zhang Yi always suspected that it was caused by the genetic drugs in Blizzard City. Bailey Chongqing nodded. After the apocalypse, the pressure faced by the region was also very huge. At that time, the whole world was in chaos, and all kinds of mutant creatures emerged one after another. Even Blizzard City could not maintain stability. Bailey Chongqing took a deep breath, as if he was feeling emotional. As a region guarding Jiangnan, we must obtain enough powerful forces as soon as possible to maintain regional stability. And genetic drugs, this kind of thing has actually been studied many years ago, and the earliest purpose was to be used in the military field. But now, it is used to promote the mutation among mutants. However, drugs are something that must have enough experimental subjects to verify the efficacy during the development process. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and stared at Bailey Chongqing. So, you became the test subjects. Bailey Chongqing sighed, a bit regretful for his deceased captain. Captain Bian was one of the earliest batches. Zhang Yi sneered and stated in a sarcastic tone, "Yes, it is completely safe to let you do the experiment. You must be loyal soldiers with guaranteed loyalty to ensure that you will not go berserk after receiving formidable power." Bailey Chongqing explained, "At that time we had no choice. It was our last resort. Otherwise, Blizzard City might no longer exist. For peace, we need to make certain sacrifices. If there is a need for sacrifice, as soldiers, we will never retreat a single step." There was a firm look in his eyes. Even at the end of the world, his faith in his heart as a loyal soldier remained the same. Zhang Yi shrugged. "I am not qualified to evaluate you. You are indeed great. Or maybe you had no other choice at the time. But I only care whether the drug has side effects. If there is any side effects, it is meaningless to me." Zhang Yi would never allow drugs of unknown composition to be injected into his body. Bailey Chongqing smiled and continued. "After continuous improvements, the performance of the supernatural drug has become more and more stable. Take a look for yourself and you'll see that there is nothing wrong with my body." He raised his arm and patted his hard biceps. "Forget it. I don't really need it." Zhang Yi rejected Bailey Chongqing's proposal without hesitation. Bailey Chongqing came over and placed his arm around Zhang Yi's shoulders. "Then I suggest you consider ordering a dose of compound number 5. Bailey Chongqing looked very serious, so Zhang Yi asked what it was. Apparently, it's an explosive potion. It can give you tremendous power in a short period of time, but after using it, there will also be extremely serious side effects. Usually, it is used in desperate situations. You can think of it as a high-performance stimulant." Zhang Yi understood what Bailey Chongqing meant. "In other words, it is something to save your life, right?" Bailey Chongqing nodded slightly. "I usually carry a copy with me, and if I'm in a desperate situation, I can use it to save my life. Of course, the exchange points for compound number 5 are very expensive, and not everyone can afford it, so I suggest you exchange one copy. At a critical moment, it can save your life." Zhang Yi turned his head sharply and stared at Bailey Chongqing curiously. "What about when we were in Tianhai City? Why didn't you use it?" Bailey Chongqing replied calmly. "If you hadn't given Captain Bian an ice soul, maybe we would have used it. Speaking of which, it seems that an ice soul is more effective than compound number 5. It's a pity that this biological catalyst from the body of an Epsilon-level mutant cannot be replicated." Zhang Yi was a little tempted. Since there is such a life-saving thing, it would be nice to have a copy. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry. The two descended the flight of stairs in the lobby on the first floor and headed towards the weapons warehouse of the Combat Command Center. During the descent, Zhang Yi asked about how strong the Samsara team really was. "I mean, how does it compare with your Black Robe team and Deng Shintong's God team? If nothing unexpected happens, Zhang Yi will cooperate with those people when the third encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon comes. Knowing some intelligence in advance will be beneficial." When Bailey Chongqing mentioned the Samsara team, there was a noticeable smile on his face. Theoretically, the 6 investigation teams in Blizzard City are of equal strength, and it's hard to say which one is stronger. However, if it's confirmed that there are people with prophetic abilities in Eclipse Moon, then it would be most appropriate to dispatch the Samsara squad to deal with them. Zhang Yi curiously asked why. Bailey Chongqing gave a mysterious smile and replied that this is due to the abilities of the members of the Samsara squad. Hearing this, Zhang Yi smiled knowingly. It doesn't take a genius to roughly guess what he was implying. You see, the names of the investigation teams are not chosen randomly, and most of them are related to their characteristics. The Black Robe team and the Heavenly God team had strong individualistic colors, and the Samsara squad, named after Samsara, suggests that most of the members are related to the law of cause and effect. So it's either they can restrain prophecy, or they can change cause and effect. If Bailey Chongqing doesn't want to be direct, he won't be rude and ask questions. However, Bailey Chongqing stated mysteriously to Zhang Yi, "When they come back, I will take you to see them. I guarantee that you will be surprised when you know who their captain is." "Oh, really? Let's wait and see then." Zhang Yi shrugged. He thought it might just be a celebrity. If it is, then is that really surprising to him? Shortly after, the two arrived at the weapons exchange warehouse. Zhang Yi handed over his scorecard. The quartermaster checked Zhang Yi's points and authority level and found them to be very high, meaning in terms of weapons, equipment, and supplies he could exchange for were far better than those of other mutants from the outer cities. After all, with a whopping 420 million points, he meets a lot of exchange authorities. The first exchange points he asked for was the SLDS-2 type battle suit. To this, the quartermaster silently checked and replied that exchange points was 50 million, and there was no limit to the number of sets he can exchange for. Did he want to redeem? Of course, this stipulation was specially made for Zhang Yi, and the approval came directly from the commander's office. Everyone, however, can only apply for a second set if their uniform was damaged. Zhang Yi held his chin and thought for a while, then asked about compound number 5. "Do I have enough authority to redeem compound number 5? Again, the quartermaster checked and nodded slightly. Apparently, the required redemption authority of compound number 5 was A level, and the redemption points was 100 million. Obviously, Zhang Yi meets the redemption conditions. "Do you want to redeem it?" the quartermaster asked. Again, Zhang Yi thought for a while before nodding slightly. He chose to redeem one copy. After all, no matter how big the side effects were, it was nothing compared to the ability to save lives at critical moments. Such a thing must be taken back to the shelter and let Zhou Qi and Lu Karen analyze its composition to see if they can produce it themselves. Anyway, since compound number 5 had been exchanged, Zhang Yi also became very interested in several other compounds, so he asked about the functions and prices of them. The quartermaster patiently introduced them to Zhang Yi one at a time. Compound number 1 increases the chances of awakening by 20%, and the exchange points are 150 million. Although it's said to be 20%, the actual effect is very ordinary. Compound number 2 strengthens an ability and can help the evolution of mutants to a certain extent, but it is limited by the user's own qualifications and the effect is unpredictable. The redemption points are 120 million. Compound number 4 is a military stimulant that can increase the strength of a mutant by 20% within 12 hours of use. The side effects are significant and may be accompanied by symptoms such as dizziness, vomiting, and dehydration. The redemption points are 20 million. Zhang Yi keenly discovered that compound number 3 did not appear on the list, so he asked about it. The quartermaster replied calmly, "Compound number 3 is not on the exchange list." "Oh really? That's quite mysterious, isn't it?" Bailey Chongqing chimed in at this moment. "These drugs are developed by the scientific research departments and some of their medicines have special effects. So they are not open to the public, although they are too expensive. I don't even know the effects or the existence of some of these drugs. However, if you join the investigation team, you can become a formal member, and these things have internal discounts if you want to exchange points for them. The reason why these things are so expensive is that they are open to the public. Ordinary soldiers or civilians in the city, or mutants from the outer city have to pay a higher price to exchange. But the special forces, such as the investigation teams and the Yenyun troops, have more friendly prices." Zhang Yi suddenly realized something and whispered into Bailey Chongqing's ear, asking if he could help him redeem the copies instead. The points will be transferred to him later. Bailey Chongqing smiled awkwardly and explained that it won't work. The exchange of such special items are registered, so it is irrational to do anything tricky once registered. Zhang Yi spread his hands helplessly. He weighed his options and finally decided not to rush to exchange the battle suit for the time being. Anyway, when carrying out the mission later, Zhu Zhang would not be stingy with a set of battle suits. The medicines, on the other hand, must be exchanged first so Lu Karen and Zhou Qi can do the research required. Resolved, Zhang Yi exchanged for 4 potions, which cost him a total of 390 million points, leaving only 30 million points left in his hand. Placing them into his alternate space, he thought about going back to Tianhai City first to personally hand the drugs over. Tianhai City was not far from Blizzard City, so he estimated the journey to only take less than half a day to go back and forth. However, Bailey Chongqing, with a mysterious smile, explained to Zhang Yi that the people from the Samsara team would arrive soon, so it would be better for Zhang Yi to meet them. Then, he can ask Zhu Zhang to let him go back to Tianhai City. Zhang Yi patted Bailey Chongqing's shoulder and raised an eyebrow with a playful look on his face. "I don't want to be the captain of the dog-licking team, so I'm not in a hurry to meet the captain of the Samsara team either. Even if I have to cooperate with them, the captain position will still be left to you. Bailey Chongqing placed an arm around Zhang Yi's shoulders and stated bitterly, "Do you think I don't want to? The issue is that if a person is not capable enough, it is a crime to take responsibility forcefully." He even felt a little regretful for his greed at the beginning. "Except you," he continued. "No one is more suitable to be the captain of Tengu. Besides, the main reason I want to introduce you to the captain of the Samsara team is because he's my friend." "Friend? Huh." Zhang Yi curled his lips. "Well, in that case, there's nothing wrong with meeting each other." Zhang Yi had no objections, and out of respect, he plans to inform Zhu Zhang before he leaves. The two left the weapons exchange warehouse and were heading to a parking space outside when they saw a massive crowd at an intersection. Zhang Yi's hearing was pretty good, so he could vaguely hear what the crowd were saying. The Samsara squad has returned victorious once again after completing their mission brilliantly. In comparison to the Celestial God squad, they're truly the pride of the common people. Gao Chongkong is our pride. He is much better than Deng Shintong, who says that only the children of wealthy families can achieve great things. Children from ordinary families like us are no worse than them. Zhang Yi watched a group of people in down jackets running towards East City. Among them are some group of girls waving tall flags and shouting vague slogans. Zhang Yi was dumbfounded. At this time, there is still such a powerful fan culture? Bailey Chongqing couldn't help smiling when he saw Zhang Yi's reaction. "How about it? Have you learned something new?" Zhang Yi, incredulous, asked Bailey Chongqing how come there are so many people. "Don't they have any work to do?" Bailey Chongqing explained calmly. "The girls who came out here to greet the Samsara team either have parents who are engaged in high-end jobs and earn enough points to support them, or they are just ordinary people, but they're here desperately chasing stars. They are quite adventurous. If they don't earn enough points because of skipping work, they can only sleep on the streets, and they won't even have points left to buy food, hot water, and electricity. But they probably believe that these moments are still worth it." Zhang Yi looked at their backs and couldn't help but think of the slogans they recited. "Gao Chongkong. Could it be that Gao Chongkong?" Bailey Chongqing nodded slightly. "Yes, is that same person. Gao Chongkong, this name was almost a household name in Huashu country. He was an extremely outstanding basketball player. He first dominated the domestic arena, then later entered the NBA, played for the Chicheng Red Suns as a forward for 12 years, and even has 3 championship rings. Now, he was the captain of the Samsara team." Bailey Chongqing's eyes flashed with the same light as those of the female fans just now. "Yes, he is a very remarkable person. Zhang Yi doesn't play basketball much, but Gao Chongkong's name was a well-known figure back then. Basically, anyone who can play basketball will be enthusiastic about Gao Chongkong." Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh. "Isn't this a complete winner in life? Whether before or after the apocalypse, he is so outstanding and dazzling." Zhang Yi was not a star chaser, so it's hard for him to comment on anything. But looking at the entire Blizzard City, it seems Gao Chongkong was one of the most popular people. Although compared to the super-rich second-generation Deng Shintong, his background is relatively ordinary and he doesn't have such good resources. But his influence among ordinary people may be even better. This kind of sports superstar was naturally very strong in terms of physical fitness, so it's not surprising that he is stronger after the era of mass mutation. On both sides of the road, countless fanatical fans shouted Gao Chongkong's name in joy and praise. A large red banner was even plastered on the 30-meter-high city wall's entrance of Blizzard City, warmly congratulating the Samsara team for their expedition to Biting Lake and their triumphant return. The chief of operations Tu Yunlai and other several senior officials even came to officially welcome the Samsara team. After these people appeared, Gao Chongkong finally got out of his car. He was a tall guy, about 6'4", with a gentle smile on his very sunny face. Gao Chongkong's blue curly hair fell naturally, adding a bit of West Coast style to his charm, and he seems to be in good shape. Gao Chongkong's appearance inevitably caused another round of screams and cheers. Tu Yunlai welcomed Gao Chongkong and thanked the entire team for all the hard work on behalf of Blizzard City. After a firm handshake, he silently bounced, leaving the stage to Gao Chongkong and the Samsara team. However, as Gao Chongkong was basking in all the glory, his eyes fell on Bailey Chongqing not far away. Gao Chongkong smiled and raised his hand high, motioning Bailey Chongqing to come over. Bailey Chongqing smiled and informed Zhang Yi that they should go and say hello. So, as the two took a couple steps forward, the crowd immediately noticed Zhang Yi with surprise, questioning who he was. They haven't seen him before. And what's more shocking was his association with Bailey Chongqing from the Black Robe team. Zhang Yi lagged behind Bailey Chongqing by half a step, and didn't want to be too eye-catching, but it was of no use, because within this brief moment, he was the topic of everyone's curiosity. Bailey Chongqing finally closed the distance between himself and his friend, smiling from ear to ear as he firmly gave Gao Chongkong a bear hug. "Congratulations, Lao Gao. Did you encounter any troubles on this trip to Biting Lake?" Gao Chongkong also smiled and casually replied that fortunately, the creature they encountered this time around was very powerful but seriously lacked brains. It just had too many subordinates, so it took them a lot of time to wipe them out. He looked at Zhang Yi and curiously asked who he was. Bailey Chongqing quickly introduced Zhang Yi with a pleasant gesture. "Let me introduce you. His name is Zhang Yi. He is a mutant from Tianhai City. Unfortunately, his story is a long one, so we will talk about it slowly later." Although Bailey Chongqing's introduction was very simple, there was no trace of contempt in Gao Chongkong's eyes. The person who could make Bailey Chongqing show this much excitement and admiration must at least be of similar level to him. He was a master. Gao Chongkong took the initiative and stretched out his hand to Zhang Yi. "Hello, Zhang Yi. I am Gao Chongkong, the captain of the Samsara squadron." Although Zhang Yi was not wearing any gloves, he decisively shook hands with Gao Chongkong. "Captain Gao, I have long heard of your name." While looking at Gao Chongkong, Zhang Yi also observed all the members of the Samsara team. The Samsara team has a total of 9 members. However, the most noteworthy ones were the 2 people next to Gao Chongkong. Standing behind him on the left was a tall and gentle woman with long red hair cascading behind her. Such a long hair color was very rare, so it was also very eye-catching. Combined with her slim figure and cute face, it was easy for anyone to take a liking towards her. Anyway, on the other side was a handsome man with a middle-parted hairstyle, but the look on his face evidently highlighted his eccentric nature. Gao Chongkong faced the crowd and shouted loudly, thanking everyone. They've returned safely and were deeply moved by their concern. There was another round of excited shouting around. Someone in the crowd even shouted for Gao Chongkong to personally unalive all the members of Eclipse Moon. As soon as this topic appeared, it instantly ignited the emotions of the surrounding audience. Most people, due to their emotions, looked down on the country of Neon. At present, Blizzard City had lost twice in the battle against Eclipse Moon, so the crowd was very angry and hopes that Gao Chongkong can save the face of the entire Jiangnan region. Zhang Yi was speechless witnessing the entire scene. How could these people not understand how powerful Eclipse Moon really was? They always exude this air of arrogance, looking down on their opponents, but they don't know that this will only make their opponents more confident and determined to relish in their victory against them. Gao Chongkong did not give a definite reply when he heard this, but as his gaze shifted back to Bailey Chongqing, he calmly stated that he was heading to the operations center to report the mission to Zhuzheng first. Once he's done, they can find a place to have some drinks and talk about what happened in Blizzard City recently while he was out on his mission. Bailey Chongqing scratched his head and nervously replied that since Gao Chongkong had just returned with a great victory, the higher-ups should welcome him appropriately first. Gao Chongkong shook his head and stated that he would refuse. "When headquarters asked me to come back, I heard something about Eclipse Moon. It is not appropriate to be too ostentatious now, which may easily cause misunderstandings. After all, the Heavenly God team just suffered heavy casualties, and Deng Shintong died in that battle. This left the entire Deng family and the combat center in a bad state. If the Samsara team starts to celebrate wildly, people would think that their celebration is a deliberate provocation." Gao Chongkong was a very thoughtful person and would not make such a mistake. "In that case," Bailey Chongqing said with a smile, "let's have a small gathering later." Zhang Yi didn't say anything as the 3 got into Bailey Chongqing's car at the parking space outside. Gao Chongkong sat in the co-pilot seat while Zhang Yi sat in the back. The car headed for the combat command center. Along the way, Gao Chongkong and Bailey Chongqing chatted casually. Zhang Yi could see that they had a good relationship. Gao Chongkong asked Bailey Chongqing about the Eclipse group. "That matter is not optimistic," he stated seriously. "Almost all members of the God team were wiped out, and only 3 people came back." Bailey Chongqing told Gao Chongkong what happened, including the failure of the last mission, but conveniently left out the newly formed investigation team. Gao Chongkong was surprised that Deng Shintong did not only fail the mission but chose to self-destruct. "It seems that you came back at the right time," Bailey Chongqing calmly added. "If nothing unexpected happens, the mission will fall on your head. You must be mentally prepared." Gao Chongkong's eyes were solemn, but he looked calm on the surface. "We're the order maintainers of the Jiangnan region. No matter who wants to disturb the peace and tranquility of this land, no matter how powerful the opponent is, we will not be afraid to take action." Bailey Chongqing nodded slightly, agreeing wholeheartedly. This time, headquarters obviously attaches more importance to Eclipse Moon. the number of people dispatched from Blizzard City will definitely increase. When you meet with Zhu Zhang, he will definitely inform you about this matter. Moreover, Eclipse Moon also suffered a lot of losses in the battle. And although their team leader killed Deng Yuena, he was also seriously injured. And they lost 5 people in the battle. Bailey Chongqing raised his thumb to the back seat and continued with a satisfied smile. The person in the back was the one who solo killed 4 members of the Eclipse group. Bailey Chongqing's words made Gao Changkong shift his gaze towards Zhang Yi. He had just returned and didn't know the details of the incident, so Zhang Yi's performance was shocking to hear. Zhang Yi waved his hand and asked Bailey Chongqing not to exaggerate too much. After all, 2 of them were on the verge of death anyway, so he just took advantage of the opportunity. Gao Changkong, still a bit incredulous, stated that it wasn't surprising now that he thinks about it. Their country is a vast land with a thriving population and many talented people. So it does not mean that only those born in big cities or with good family backgrounds have strong abilities. Zhang Yi remembered at this time that Gao Changkong was also from an ordinary family. These words seemed to have some meaning of mutual appreciation. However, as Gao Changkong sat properly in his seat, his expression suddenly changed to that of cold seriousness, and his next thoughts revealed a shocking revelation. It seems that in order to join forces with the Eclipse group to overthrow Zhu Zhang, we must first get rid of this troublesome guy also. The scene then shifted to the password bar, and it seems like an hour had passed. And within this hour, Gao Changkong met Zhu Zhang inside his office at the Combat Command Center. The two just talked about the content of the mission briefly, and after praising his achievements, they began to discuss the matter of Eclipse Moon. Half an hour later, the meeting was over and the 3 left there and came to the password bar. As soon as Gao Changkong entered the place, he immediately caused a sensation in the entire bar. The veterans, the bartenders, and even the dancers. Everyone showed great enthusiasm and warmly welcomed him back. Once again, our Captain Gao had completed his assigned task perfectly. It seems we have to trouble you to deal with the Neon's matter as well. After all, our Huashu nation's dignity must be restored. Gao Changkong smiled and nodded slightly to everyone. He then proceeded to book his usual sectional box as the 3 entered amid the cheers of the crowd. Also, the general manager of the establishment personally came out to tell Gao Changkong that today's consumption could be waived. This was, of course, not a small gesture, especially after the end of the world, where alcohol itself was an expensive luxury that ordinary people dare not even think about. And the consumption of the password bar has always been high, with an average consumption of more than 20,000 points per person. Not to mention customers of Gao Changkong and Bailey Chongqing's status, who often spend 6 figures. Therefore, free shit are extremely rare in the password bar. Taking a seat, Gao Changkong smiled bitterly and wondered why he'd never received this kind of treatment in the past. Bailey Chongqing smiled and took a seat right next to him, stating that the reason was quite simple. It's because everyone has high hopes for him now. Gao Changkong frowned slightly and sighed softly. Ultimately, it's due to the failure of the Heavenly God team that everyone is panicking. The more chaotic the time, the more people expect heroes to appear. Everyone in Blizzard City is currently uneasy, and Gao Changkong's victorious return immediately made him a hero that people were looking forward to. Bailey Chongqing's cheerful demeanor immediately took a nosedive at the mention of the Heavenly God team. Their demise, especially Deng Yuena's death, momentarily filled him with regret, although they weren't close. At this moment, Gao Changkong's attention shifted to Zhang Yi with a smile on his face and a meaningful look in his eyes. Zhu Zhang has already told me about you, and I must admit, I'm still a little shocked that you managed to gain the commander's attention. If someone like you appeared in Blizzard City, you would definitely become a captain of an investigation team or a detachment commander in the Yenyun army. Zhang Yi raised his glass to Gao Changkong. You are too kind. Compared with Captain Gao, I still have a lot to learn. Hearing this, Gao Changkong laughed a little, stating that Zhang Yi was too modest. The two clinked their glasses in the air and gulped down their glass of wine. With his usual smile, Bailey Chongqing curiously questioned Gao Changkong what else Zhu Zhang filled him in. Or is it inconvenient to tell them? Well, there was nothing inconvenient, just the matter of merging the God Squad and the Black Robe Squad to form the Tengu Squad. Gao Changkong then pointed in Zhang Yi's direction and continued, Zhu Zhang also told me that he really wants you to be the captain. Zhang Yi sighed softly and shrugged. I refused the offer and I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. I'm just an ordinary warehouse manager in Tianhai City. I neither have the talent to lead, nor do I have the courage. So I don't intend on managing the lives of other people. Zhang Yi spread a hand towards Gao Changkong and continued. Now that Captain Gao is back, you will definitely be in charge of this operation. So why don't you manage the Tengu Squad as well? Gao Changkong shook his head helplessly. That's impossible. The higher-ups will not be willing to hand over the Celestial God Squad and the Black Robe Squad to me. Zhang Yi also realized at this time that the top management would not want their subordinates to have too much power. After all, it is the end of the world. And as the previous societal order collapsed, Blizzard City barely maintained theirs. And at present, it looks strong, but in fact, the rules were not stable. They might collapse if care is not taken. If Gao Changkong really gathers the power of the other two investigation teams, then in the future, it would be difficult for any force in the entire Blizzard City to compete with them. Zhu Zhang and his people's considerations were reasonable. Bailey Chongqing, at this moment, frowned slightly and calmly pointed out that currently, there's not many people in the entire Blizzard City who can lead an investigation team. They all hold important positions and cannot leave Blizzard City. So if Gao Changkong doesn't take the responsibility, who else can? Hearing this, Gao Changkong smiled disapprovingly and stated that Zhu Zhang and the others will make proper arrangements. As the gun barrel, all they need to do was to obey the arrangements of the top leaders. Gao Changkong looked indifferent, as if he didn't mind how the upper echelons arranged these kinds of things. After all, Gao Changkong, the popular captain of the investigation team in Blizzard City, looks sunny and calm. He was also elegant and easygoing, and can get along well with many people. When Zhang Yi chatted with him, he felt that Gao Changkong had a very good temperament. So gradually, Zhang Yi also began to talk to him in depth about some other topics, trying to gather any useful information. The first being the tasks recently performed by Gao Changkong's investigation team. Captain Gao, I don't know if it's convenient to ask a question about the tasks of your investigation team. Gao Changkong thought for a while and smiled knowingly. You must ask your question first so I can grasp what aspect you are asking about. After all, some things are required by the top management to be kept confidential, but most of the tasks are actually not very secretive. Zhang Yi placed his wine glass in front of him and asked his first question. There are 6 investigation teams in the Jiangnan district, and they have been on missions for a long time. Even the appearance of neon mutants did not recall all the investigation teams. Is your mission level higher than Eclipse Moon? Gao Changkong thought for a while and replied with a smile. It's difficult to answer this question in one sentence. I can only say that our missions are different every time, and they are varied and strange. He pointed at Bailey Chongqing. Take the Black Robe Squad, for example. They are mainly responsible for the people problem. If there is a large-scale unrest in various cities, they will be responsible for suppressing it. And our Samsara squad has been solving the beast problem recently, and anything relating to mutated wild beasts. You should know that after the end of the world, we were ushered into the Great Mutation era. Not only humans can mutate and evolve, but other creatures can as well. Zhang Yi nodded slightly. Of course I know this. My pet is a mutated creature after all. Gao Changkong continued with a smile. There are fewer mutants in urban areas, and there are extremely few fierce ones. However, in the mountains and rivers, where wild animals gather, large-scale mutant groups may appear. Just like us humans. The more people there are, the higher the probability of mutants appearing. And the stronger the mutant individuals are. Even in some areas, mutant groups of beasts have appeared. Gao Changkong's eyes became serious. Take Biting Lake, where we previously were, for example. Many mutant beasts have wisdom, and are even no less than humans. Even ordinary mutant jackals, tigers, and leopards are not comparable to human physical fitness. The global catastrophe is almost a return to the primitive age, and our advantage in weapons has been greatly weakened. This has allowed mutated beasts to rise. During my team's mission, the 5 cities around Biting Lake had been occupied by the beasts, and we, with the full support of Blizzard City, took 3 months to wipe them out. Zhang Yi couldn't help but take a deep breath. Isn't this a beast tide? But if you think about it carefully, this is actually very reasonable. After a long period of evolution, humans are no longer suitable for nature. The sudden disaster killed most people. On the contrary, wild animals that are more adaptable to changes in the natural environment began to rise. After all, most wild animals are physically stronger than humans. As long as there are some mutations, they will become a tough opponent. Zhang Yi couldn't help but comment. Fortunately, I live by the sea. The salt content of the seawater near the coast is not that high, so it is basically frozen. And even if there are some mutant creatures, they will not be too strong. I am afraid that there are many powerful and terrifying mutants in the ocean. However, those are also creatures in the deep sea. They wouldn't run to the land to make trouble. Zhang Yi asked curiously. Then, the situation of the other investigation teams is the same. Gao Changkong smiled and just calmly replied that they all have their own troubles. He didn't elaborate, and Zhang Yi realized that this was a secret that could not be known to outsiders. After all, he was not a regular employee of Blizzard City yet, so some words should be kept from him. And just like that, an hour passed, and the three of them drank and chatted nonstop. The scene shifted to the commander's office at the Combat Command Center, where Zhu Zhang was currently on the phone with Zhang Yi, learning of Zhang Yi's departure to Tianhai City to meet his companions. Zhu Zhang reluctantly agreed to this request. However, he must go and come back quickly. With the arrival of the Samsara team, they have to start their next round of combat operations immediately. And it's without question that this operation cannot be done without Zhang Yi. Zhu Zhang ended the call, and as his attention shifted back to Deng Yuena, who was leisurely drinking his cup of tea, Zhu Zhang, with a satisfied demeanor, stated casually, "Mr. Deng, now that everyone is here, we can start implementing our plan. Do you have any questions?" Deng Yuena placed down his cup of tea, and with a serious expression, he asked Zhu Zhang if he had decided on the candidate. Zhu Zhang frowned slightly. Zhang Yi is a very good candidate, but he is unwilling to take on the responsibilities of the captain. His ability is very important for this operation, but I am more optimistic about his ability to block the opponent's prophetic ability, rather than his combat power. The captain can be replaced by someone else. In terms of command alone, Bailey Chongqing might be more suitable. Deng Yuena simply smiled and added that unfortunately, Bailey Chongqing's current combat power is at least a deputy captain's level. And although there is a gap compared with the 6 captains, it is only below them and obviously not enough to convince anyone of Bailey Chongqing taking the captain's mantle. It's also not an option to give all the command power to Gao Chongkong. After all, I know you can't give such a great power to one person. But this operation, we, the residents of Blizzard City, can no longer accept another failure. If we lose again, you should know how serious the consequences will be. Zhu Zhang's expression became cold and serious. If he fails to eclipse Moon again, he, the commander of the Jiangnan region, will have to resign no matter what. But with their best candidate for the commander's position being super dead, do they really want Gao Chongkong to hold such a huge power and position? Fuck no. Deng Yuena slowly pointed a finger in Zhu Zhang's direction and continued. In my opinion, Zhang Yi is the best candidate. You mentioned that he refused the captain's position. But wasn't it because the price you offered was not high enough to impress him? Zhu Zhang frowned and retorted, calmly stating that he promised Zhang Yi an official status as a captain of an investigation team, and all the benefits of an A-level material supply treatment of Blizzard City. In addition to that was the exchange rights of the weapons warehouse, which were basically open to him. These are already considered as a very high treatment. If it weren't for the extraordinary period they're in, he wouldn't even have had such a good opportunity. Deng Yuena shook his head slightly and smiled brightly at what he just heard. Zhu Zhang, he stated, "It seems you were truly just a soldier back then and have no idea how to do business. Real business is what I excel at, and it seems I have to say a few words in this regard. In business, it is important to take what you need. If you want Zhang Yi to agree to your conditions, you must first meet his requirements." Obviously, Zhu Zhang was clueless about this matter. What do you mean by agree to his conditions? How could he know what Zhang Yi's requirements are? And at present, it seems that Zhang Yi doesn't even need anything urgently. Deng Yuena laughed slightly and calmly took a sip of his tea. At this point, there's no doubt that Zhu Zhang would fumble the bag if given another chance. If this matter is difficult for you to handle, why not let me do it? Zhu Zhang couldn't believe his ears. When did Deng Yuena become so generous? As Deng Yuena held his chin deviously, a meaningful realization flashed across his narrowed eyes. He asked Zhu Zhang to promise him one thing if he succeeds in convincing Zhang Yi to be the captain of the newly formed investigation team. Hearing this, Zhu Zhang was surprised. He knew this old guy really wouldn't do good things for nothing. Zhu Zhang frowned slightly and calmly asked what the request was. Deng Yuena replied leisurely, "I want Zhang Yi to lead the next operation to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon. Not only that, but also to spread his reputation." Zhang Yi and the Deng family had no connection, so obviously, Deng Yuena wasn't doing this for Zhang Yi's sake. However, one might wonder what the real reason behind this sudden request. Fortunately, Zhu Zhang instantly guessed Deng Yuena's purpose and questioned knowingly, "Are you worried that Gao Chongkong will gain too much prestige in Blizzard City because of this matter, thus affecting your Deng family?" Deng Yuena smiled, took another sip of his tea and didn't answer Zhu Zhang's question directly. "Zhu Zhang, I don't think you want your subordinates to be too successful to be a threat to the master. So this is a necessary precaution, right?" Zhu Zhang was in a dilemma, but no matter how you look at it, Gao Chongkong was more suitable than Zhang Yi. Although Zhang Yi made a great contribution last time, it was only because of his strong personal strength and good luck to pick up Liao Honglei's loophole. Nonetheless, this request was not an impossible task. Deng Yuena smiled and even added that young people may be a little immature in this regard, but they can still provide guidance. We need to let the young people gain more experience. After all, in the end times, what we need most was to quickly train new talents. We need to give young and new people opportunities to develop. Zhu Zhang understood the hidden meaning behind this statement and was not pleased. After all, he wasn't that old. Well, too old if we're being precise. However, I can still consider what you just said. Deng Yuen's smile became even stronger. Well, in that case, I'll go and convince Zhang Yi. Deng Yuenbo said this as he got up and prepared to bounce. But before leaving, Zhu Zhang suddenly asked behind him how his family was holding up. How was the Deng family doing? Deng Yuenbo paused on his way out and sighed softly. That incident was a big blow to him, so don't disturb him for the time being. Zhu Zhang nodded slightly and respectfully agreed. Anyway, after the call with Zhu Zhang, Zhang Yi took Liang Yu and Flower to the subway station as the three traveled back to the shelter. No one knew about their return. So when Chunlei saw Zhang Yi, he screamed and rushed over to hug his thigh. "Boss, why were you gone for so long this time? I was worried all day when you were not at home." Zhang Yi couldn't help rolling his eyes at Chunlei's cowardly behavior. "You are still as timid as ever. Nothing happened in Tianhai City, so what were you afraid of?" Chunlei wiped his tears, looking a bit aggrieved as he got up. Although nothing happened in Tianhai City, the mushroom explosion that occurred was really scary. He even pointed in the direction of Jiangning City. Although it was hundreds of kilometers away, the impact of the god of death of love could be felt in Tianhai City. Zhang Yi had instructed Xin Xin not to tell the others about Eclipse Moon. But the explosion could never be hidden. "Don't worry," he said lightly. Everything was under control, including the release of the god of death of love. Zhang Yi glanced around and asked where everyone was. What were they doing? Chunlei blinked and explained that Uncle Yu has been practicing boxing on the 3rd underground floor recently, stating that his current exercise might help him achieve a breakthrough in his abilities. Lu Karen was probably at her workplace at this time. Zhou Qir and Xin Xin are in the infirmary, and no one knows what they've been doing. The rest are in their rooms. Zhang Yi nodded slightly and headed for the infirmary. "Okay, I'll go see them." The main purpose of coming back this time was to give those compounds to Zhou Qir and Lu Karen for research. He couldn't stay for long, and he had to go back to Blizzard City the next day. And for a long time to come, he would be busy with the matter of destroying Eclipse Moon. Zhang Yi went straight to the infirmary. But the moment he reached for the door, he heard a splashing sound of water. Zhang Yi suddenly became curious and didn't know exactly what Zhou Qir was doing. What's going on? There seemed to be so much water? Could it be that she was practicing swimming? Zhang Yi immediately entered after a knock on the door. "Qir, are you there?" As if frightened by Zhang Yi, there was a sound of something breaking inside. Zhang Yi took a couple steps forward, but what he saw shocked him greatly. Xin Xin was tied tightly to a chair, soaking wet, and her cute little face, as big as a palm, was as pale as a dead person. Zhang Yi just stood there, momentarily stunned. He didn't understand what was happening as Zhou Qir rushed to Xin Xin's side and activated her ability to resuscitate her once again. Her eyes were full of worry, but also a hint of expectation. The 37th experiment, is it finally going to succeed? But at that very moment, Xin Xin's eyes, which looked almost lifeless, suddenly rolled down. And the moment she saw Zhang Yi, a light suddenly burst out from her dim eyes and a sick smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Anyway, just when Zhang Yi seems to be piecing what's happening together, he suddenly saw an extremely strange scene. Above Xin Xin's lying figure, an angel with 6 white wings, holding a sacred bow and arrow slowly emerged. And with it was a burst of holy light which illuminated the entire room. It was so bright that Zhou Qir found it difficult to open her eyes. Xin Xin, however, was immersed in this light as she blushes profusely, her sick smile replaced by a radiant one. "Big brother, you are finally back." Xin Xin's experiment was successful. "Now, I am also a mutant." After what seems like forever, Zhang Yi finally figured out everything. Although Xin Xin saved her life with Zhou Qir's help and successfully awakened her superpowers, the repeated tortures over the past few days have brought her mental and physical state to the extreme. So she immediately passed out, and with that, the angel-like figure slowly dissipated as well. Zhang Yi slowly approached them and asked Zhou Qir what was going on. Zhou Qir immediately loosened the restraints and quietly narrated what happened. After a long period of research, we finally found that awakening superpowers is strongly related to people's obsession. When awakening, the stronger the obsession of a person is, the more powerful the power obtained after awakening is likely to be. Lust, hatred, jealousy, greed, all these emotions and more will become the power of awakening. Xin Xin rejected the Ice Soul back then because she hoped to get a stronger and purer power. And the way to obtain this power was to constantly experience death, to squeeze out one's own potential, and to refine the mind in one's heart to the extreme. Zhang Yi nodded slightly, understanding the situation. If he didn't know young Xin Xin all too well, he really would have thought she was a crazy girl. Who, in their right mind, would use this method to awaken superpowers after being offered an easier way to do so? Zhang Yi had died once before, so he knows how uncomfortable the entire experience was. But just thinking about the 37 death experiences would make anyone shudder. Zhou Qi stared at her cousin with mixed feelings in her heart. She was willing to endlessly jump back and forth on the edge of life and death in order to obtain powerful superpowers. So what kind of superpower did young Xin Xin awaken? After all, the way she awakened was daunting just by looking at it. Although Zhou Qi was quite happy with the results, she still felt a little distressed for young Xin Xin. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, rushed over for a closer look. He also couldn't help but wonder what kind of superpower young Xin Xin had awakened. If she somehow managed to couple her top-notch brain with a strong fighting ability, wouldn't she be quite unstoppable? Anyway, Zhang Yi was afraid of disturbing her peaceful sleep any further, so he called Zhou Qi aside. Here, let's go find Lu Karen first. There is something I need you two to help me research on. Zhou Qi nodded slightly without any fuss, and shortly after, the two came to Lu Karen's studio. Seeing Zhang Yi, Lu Karen was delighted. Brother, you're back. Didn't you participate in the mission to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon? Are you injured? She thought of the explosion that shocked all the neighboring cities, and hurried over. Zhang Yi saw her worried look and replied that he was fine. Nothing serious happened to him. Despite her brilliant mind, Lu Karen was the only person whose thought process was very simple, so Zhang Yi didn't need to worry too much when communicating with her. After not seeing each other for a while, the little girl seemed to have grown up a little. Lu Karen patted her chest and spoke excitedly. That's great, but what about the recent events in Blizzard City? Has Eclipse Moon been completely eliminated? Zhang Yi smiled and replied that they'll talk about that matter later, but he needs to show them a few things first. He then took out the several medicines he had exchanged from his alternate space and showed them to the two. The compounds were in the form of pills, so they can just scrape off a little bit and study them slowly. With Lu Karen's ability, she can analyze the composition of the materials, and with Zhou Qi's knowledge about medicine, she can also analyze the efficacy and side effects of the drugs. Zhang Yi was optimistic, although he doesn't expect them to be able to replicate the drugs. After all, it is much more difficult to create these sort of things than weapons. But if Zhou Qi and Lu Karen can really do it, it would be the best. If they can't, it doesn't matter. The important thing was giving it a try. In that way, Zhang Yi can quickly improve the strength of his family, especially Uncle Yu and Chunlei if the results prove to be successful. Zhou Qi took the medicine and curiously asked what kind of medicine they were. Zhang Yi thought for a brief moment and stated calmly, "It's a very expensive medicine. I spent a huge amount of points to exchange them from Blizzard City." He touched his chin and continued, "It is said to be a genetic medicine. They have different effects that can enhance the strength of superpowers and even increase the probability of superpower awakening." Zhou Qi and Lu Karen's eyes lit up when they heard this. There's actually such a good thing. As expected of the Jiangnan region, it's amazing. Zhou Qi frowned slightly as she thought of something. Apparently, the development of these kinds of medicines were very complicated. Without professional equipment and materials, it would be difficult to replicate it. Lu Karen pursed his lips and added, "My ability can combine molecular components, and the need for instruments and equipment is not that high. However, even if the composition structure is known, the process of refining the medicine is not clear. This is also difficult to do." Zhang Yi was prepared, so he was not disappointed. "I may face a big battle very soon, so please help me take a look at its specific effects and side effects so that I can have an idea. As for whether it can be replicated, you should try it more in the future. Do your best. If you can't, then there's nothing that can be done." Zhang Yi has never been a person who makes excessive demands. Zhou Qi immediately stated that she'll go back to the infirmary later and scrape off a little powder, which will be enough for the research. Zhang Yi nodded slightly, quite satisfied. "Okay, but there's no rush for this matter. According to the information currently obtained by the Jiangnan region, the Eclipse group suffered heavy losses and has disappeared. So it's likely that they're recuperating in secret or recruiting helpers. Anyway, let's go eat first. When Xin Xin wakes up, I will tell you what has happened recently." 2 hours later, Zhou Haimei and Yang Min finally prepared a large table of food. And Yang Xin Xin also woke up under Zhou Qi's care. Yang Xin Xin sat down next to Zhang Yi, hugged his arm intimately, and looked up at him with a smile. "Big brother, Xin Xin can now help you in the future." Zhang Yi was curious about Yang Xin Xin's ability, and reached out to scratch her pink nose. "You have always been my best helper." Yang Xin Xin chuckled and replied that the situation back then was different. Now, she doesn't need to hide in the shelter all the time. She can follow Zhang Yi and fight with him like Liang Yu and Flower. Zhang Yi suddenly became curious. Logically speaking, the way Yang Xin Xin obtained her superpowers was very terrifying. She went through a full 37 cycles of death. But in terms of the degree of cruelty, it is hard to say that it was more severe than his own. After all, Zhang Yi was hacked to death, so the resentment in his heart accumulated to the deepest level and awakened his superpowers. And although Yang Xin Xin experienced the feeling of death many times, she subconsciously understood that this was just an experiment, and Zhou here would save her at the critical moment. He leaned close to Yang Xin Xin's ear, and the warm breath in his mouth was exhaled beside her crystal-clear earlobe. What exactly is your special ability? You can tell, big brother. Yang Xin Xin's face and neck turned red, and she raised her head like a little temptress. Big brother, do you want to try it? Zhang Yi was stunned. Let me try? In other words, it is not an ability of pure attack attribute. Yang Xin Xin smiled playfully and gently reassured Zhang Yi. Don't worry, I'm not going to use my ability on my big brother. At this point, Zhang Yi looked and felt strange. Seriously, what kind of ability is it? Yang Xin Xin didn't keep Zhang Yi in suspense any longer and calmly explained. My ability is named Angel of Desire, which basically allows me to manipulate people's hearts. Love, hatred, anger, joy, all these emotions and more. As long as a person is shot by the angel's arrow, they will have such feelings from the bottom of their hearts. Then, they can be completely controlled by these emotions. Yang Xin Xin held her face with both hands. Her face flushed morbidly. What a wonderful ability it is to be able to play with people's hearts at will. Good lord. Zhang Yi couldn't help swallowing his saliva. The ability to play with people's hearts really fits the heart of this Yandere girl. He suddenly became alert as numerous thoughts boggled his mind. What if this girl took the opportunity to sneak attack him and made him fall in love with someone or hate someone? It would be miserable, although he understood that Yang Xin Xin would not hurt him. But in the eyes of this Yandere girl, good and bad things naturally have different definitions. So he immediately diverted his attention and served Yang Xin Xin with some lovely dish, and even told her to eat something. This sudden gesture was a little bit forced, so the situation became a little bit awkward. Zhang Yi then continued to ask indirectly, inquiring about the characteristics of Yang Xin Xin's ability. Yang Xin Xin did not hide anything from Zhang Yi, and told him everything about her known abilities. After listening, Zhang Yi fell into silence for a while, because the abilities obtained through such a terrifying way have extremely high upper and lower limits. If it falls into the hands of an ordinary person, this ability is quite useless, and might be even considered as playing with fire if you are not careful. But once used properly, it can create incredible effects at the right time. Sure enough, it fits Yang Xin Xin's character. Anyway, the warm scene of a family crowded around a round table and eating lively made Zhang Yi feel very relaxed. Although he left for Blizzard City not long ago, he had experienced so many things that he had the illusion that he had not been with everyone for a long time. During the meal, the topic soon turned to the Eclipse group. Obviously, everyone was very concerned about that foreign organization. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Yi planned to tell everyone the truth about the matter. In any case, everyone must be mentally prepared, because he couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't appear in Tianhai City. Zhang Yi calmly told them about Eclipse Moon's situation, about the fact that the Jiangnan district headquarters failed in the encirclement and suppression operation. As soon as this was said, everyone's expressions were filled with surprise and worry. What? Chunlei looked incredulous. Even the people in Blizzard City failed? Didn't they send out an investigation team? At least it's the same level as the Black Robe team back then, right? Plus, there are more than a dozen mutants from other cities like you, boss. So how come the 13 guardians of the Jiangnan region, after basically using all the forces they can mobilize, still lose? Zhang Yi took a deep breath and shook his head helplessly as he continued. I didn't expect it either. And not just me, but probably no one could have expected this outcome. Not only did they lose, but they also lost miserably. The god team was almost wiped out, and their captain Deng Shintong also died in battle. Liang Yu interjected at this moment, and added that if it weren't for Zhang Yi suddenly coming out and killing 4 members of Eclipse Moon, then the battle would have been a complete and utter defeat. Hearing this, Uncle Yu found it hard to accept. He held his forehead with one hand, his expression extremely painful. Those damn little neons, are they really that strong? Zhang Yi frowned slightly. At first, he too was unwilling to accept this, but the facts were before his eyes, and he couldn't just refuse to accept them. At this moment, Yang Xin Xin suddenly stated that she smells a conspiracy in this matter. The dinner table suddenly became eerie quiet because everyone had abruptly stopped what they were doing when Yang Xin Xin dropped her bombshell statement. Zhang Yi turned his head and looked at Yang Xin Xin next to him. Conspiracy? What kind of conspiracy could there be in this matter? Yang Xin wiped her mouth with a napkin and explained in a calm tone. Big brother, I have only seen Bien Junwar with the combat power of a captain, and he was seriously injured and dying. Do you think a captain is easy to kill? Zhang Yi shook his head vehemently. That's a cruel joke to even think about. If I don't know his ability or make adequate preparations ahead of time, it will be difficult for me to kill him even with my current abilities. Intelligence is extremely important in the battle between mutants. Suddenly, Zhang Yi thought of something. You mean the other party can't kill Deng Shintong and the other members of the Heavenly God team so easily without knowing their abilities? Yang Xin glanced at him and smiled knowingly. At worst, the members of this God team will be able to escape, right? It's impossible that most of them would be swiftly and efficiently killed by the Eclipse group, leaving no room for escape. Zhang Yi thought of Deng Shintong's ability to manipulate light, which was one of the best abilities for concealing attacks and escaping. If a captain is determined to escape, it will be absolutely difficult to kill him unless the other party is a mutant of an Epsilon level. Then, the next obvious question would be about the other party having a mutant of the Epsilon level. According to the feedback from Zhu Zhang and the others, it is obviously not the case. If there really was such a person, Eclipse Moon would have completely flattened the entire Neon Islands first, before clashing with their country. But our intelligence reveals that the Eclipse group couldn't directly confront the Kanto boss in the Azuma organization. However, Zhang Yi murmured, there is a mutant with the ability of prophecy among them. Through this ability, it shouldn't be difficult to predict Deng Shintong and his team members' abilities, right? Yang Xin tilted her head and smiled slightly. Big brother, if that mutant with the ability of prophecy can really predict the opponent's ability, then I think she must be at the level of Epsilon. Because in the duel between mutants, the influence of the first-hand intelligence on the battle situation exceeds 30%, and even exceeds 50% in group battles. So, if they had such an ability, why didn't they kill Izumo in Kanto? Zhang Yi put down the chopsticks in his hand involuntarily. It was blatantly clear that he hadn't thought about these questions carefully before. However, after hearing her little redhead's analysis, he slowly developed a creepy feeling upon realizing what Yang Xin was getting at. Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xin and stated in absolute disbelief. You mean there is a traitor in Blizzard City? I don't really want to believe it. Hearing this, everyone also expressed their disbelief on this matter. Chunlei even thought this analysis makes absolutely no sense. And Uncle Yu strongly believes that most of the people in Blizzard City, being soldiers, would never sell out their country. Zhou Kier asked the obvious follow-up question. After all, as impossible as it may be, if there is indeed a traitor in Blizzard City, then what can they gain from cooperating with this Ronin organization? Again, Yang Xin calmly explained, although this matter sounds outrageous, no matter from which angle to analyze, the strength of the Jiangnan region is absolutely superior to the Ronin organization. And it is close to impossible for them to lose in the manner Big Brother described earlier. Therefore, if we analyze it from ordinary logic, we naturally won't think that there is a traitor in Blizzard City. But what if we think about it from another angle? Could it be that someone in Blizzard City deliberately used the Eclipse Moon to deal with the Celestial God Squad? As far as I know, the inside of Blizzard City is not a monolithic entity. These words instantly reminded Zhang Yi. The Deng family has very high prestige and power in Blizzard City. And Deng Shintong was the successor of the Deng family, and rumored that the Deng family intended to promote him to the position of Zhu Zheng's successor. After all, in the end times, life and death are unpredictable, and no one knows how long Zhu Zheng can live. Moreover, it is always necessary to plan ahead and train a group of successors for Lao Zhu. At this moment, Zhang Yi's thoughts in his mind became even more confused. If you think about it from Yang Xin's perspective, the situation will be much more terrifying and serious. Because Zhang Yi has no idea how many factions there are in Blizzard City. There is even a possibility that Zhu Zheng himself wants to eradicate Deng Shintong. After all, while he is still sitting in his seat, someone has set his sights on his throne. This kind of power ambiguity is very subtle. Nonetheless, Yang Xin's thinking ability opened a new door for Zhang Yi, although this analysis got too complicated real quick the more he thought about it. However, excluding all the impossibilities, the one left at the end, no matter how incredible it was the truth. Will he be implicated and stabbed in the back like the Heavenly God team if this conspiracy turns out to be true? Seeing Zhang Yi's tangled expression, Yang Xin continued to analyze the situation. Big brother, Zhu Zheng wants you to be the captain and lead the new investigation team, right? Have you ever thought about why? Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xin and replied calmly, because my ability can help them deal with Eclipse Moon. And from the previous campaign, I exceeded all expectations and turned out to be very strong. Yang Xin nodded in agreement. Of course, there is an element of this aspect, and strength is very important. But since the main purpose of some people in the region to unalive Deng Shintong has been achieved, what needs to be done next is to drive Eclipse Moon out of Huashu country. However, the person chosen to lead the team for this operation, in addition to having a certain strength, must also have an important trait, that is, not to threaten the power at the top. After all, the local mutants in Blizzard City, as long as they have enough strength, must have a corresponding identity. But at this point, whoever defeats Eclipse Moon and saves the face of the Jiangnan region, and even the entire Huashu country, his reputation will quickly rise to an incredible level, and that person may become Zhu Zheng's successor. But in Blizzard City, multiple forces are restraining each other, and no one wants the other to take the credit. Zhang Yi held his chin and added thoughtfully, "So, they want to push me, a mutant from the outer city, to the forefront, right? After all, even if I complete this mission, I will not pose any threat to the top management since I don't have any foundation in Blizzard City. And on top of that, I have always refused Blizzard City's solicitation, indicating that I'm a person who has no desire for power or Zhu Zheng's position. If the mission succeeds and I become a hero in people's minds, they can just let me stay in Tianhai City. So that's it." "I see." Zhang Yi wasn't dense after all, so immediately figured out some things at once after Yang Xinxin's analysis. Folding his arms, he sighed and muttered, "This muddy water is really not easy to wade through." Seeing Zhang Yi's demeanor, Yang Xinxin reassured him of his situation and the need not to worry so much. In her opinion, if her current analysis proves to be the case, Zhang Yi will be safer. Because only if he takes the position of captain of the Tengu team can the internal peace of Blizzard City be achieved. By extension, the major forces in the dark will reach a consensus and would probably not trip each other up. Zhang Yi shrugged. "I hope so. Anyway, I have thought about it, and this mission is very challenging. If the situation is not good, I will run away and save my life first." Zhang Yi has a clear understanding of himself, and under no circumstance will he be under the influence of awakening a powerful ability or be more capable of fighting. There were too many things involved in this Eclipse incident, so he needs to tread carefully in order not to be blindsided. Yang Xinxin smiled mysteriously and questioned if Zhang Yi was worried. If he was, then she can just tag along and help him with all the advice he needs. It seems this was Yang Xinxin's real purpose all along after cleverly pointing out the need for Zhang Yi to take her with him. Zhang Yi playfully tapped on her forehead with a finger and reminded her that she hadn't experienced a real battle before. Isn't she afraid? After all, if she comes along, he can't guarantee that he would always be by her side to protect her. People die on the battlefield, you know. Zhang Yi was still unclear about the effect of her abilities and didn't want to risk her safety. However, Yang Xinxin was serious about tagging along. She confidently told Zhang Yi that she wasn't scared. She also won't cause trouble for her brother either, but her brother shouldn't treat her like a child. Besides, it's also safer to have your own people around you for this particular operation. Isn't it? Hearing this, Uncle Yu immediately spoke up in a serious tone, stating that Yang Xinxin was right. Zhang Yi needed to surround himself with trustworthy people. If their discussion turns out to be true, then it just proves that the people in Blizzard City were not trustworthy, so it's better for Zhang Yi to use his own people, such as himself. Zhang Yi simply waved a hand and told the two to stop with their pointless persuasions. The opponent this time around was no joke. Even Blizzard City has carefully selected elites to participate in the battle. Nonetheless, he'll carefully think about this matter again before making a decision. But as he ended the discussion and told everyone to enjoy their meal, he felt that he really needed Yang Xinxin by his side. In terms of intellect, she was much more useful to him, although this was also an opportunity to observe her superpowers and cultivate her combat abilities. After dinner, Zhang Yi did think things over, and around midnight, he quietly came to Yang Xinxin's room after simply knocking on the door. Yang Xinxin sat on her queen-size bed, delighted upon seeing Zhang Yi. "Big brother, I knew you would come." Zhang Yi took a deep breath and took out 2 guns from his alternate space. "This is your own choice, so no matter what happens, you won't have the chance to regret it. These 2 guns don't have much recoil, so you should have no problem using them. But you still need to practice hard. You don't need to be a good shooter, just use it for self-defense." Yang Xinxin happily took the guns as Zhang Yi continued. "The one in your left hand is loaded with ordinary bullets for ordinary people, and the other in your right hand is loaded with origin bullets for mutants." Obviously, this meant that he intends to take her with him. In front of Zhang Yi, Yang Xinxin skillfully disassembled the gun, checked the magazine, and reassembled it after confirming that there was no problem. Seeing Zhang Yi's surprised look, Yang Xinxin smiled and explained that she had been practicing a lot of shooting, so she doesn't really need her big brother to teach her. Impressed, Zhang Yi sat next to her. "It seems that you have been practicing your shooting skills secretly, just waiting for me to notice. When we get to Blizzard City, I will get you a suitable battle suit to wear. Also, Flower will follow you at all times and be responsible for protecting your safety." Zhang Yi gently patted her head and stated that he will try his best to take her with him on the battlefield. But if they encounter a powerful mutant, she should stay away. Zhang Yi continued to carefully lay out the details that she needed to know on the battlefield. And although young Xin Xin might already be aware of most of this information, she was still pleased to hear it. After all, it meant that her big brother was too kind and cared about her greatly. The two share a hug as Zhang Yi assures her not to worry. He will bring her back safely. The next morning, Zhang Yi invited Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, and Chen Jingguan to his shelter and informed them about his participation in the upcoming encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon. He also decides to fill them in a little. Linhai City has been destroyed, and Jiangning City is also close to destruction. Now that the Eclipse group has fled, I'm afraid their next target will our Tianhai City. Hearing this, the faces of the three leaders changed drastically. They were all very worried. It's good to know how to be afraid. For the next period of time, stay in the base obediently. Especially you, Zhang Yi points in Chen Jingguan's direction. If the enemy wants to attack Tianhai City, it is likely going to be an attack from the sea. So your people need to guard the coastline. Chen Jingguan was a little nervous, but he still reassured Zhang Yi not to worry. He would have his people patrol the coastline at all times and prevent anyone from getting through. Although Zhang Yi hopes that Tianhai City doesn't repeat the same mistake, he could only do this to help and sternly reminds the three leaders to be extra careful from this point forth. Inwardly, he hopes young Xin Xin's analysis was just groundless worry. Meanwhile, in Blizzard City, Gao Chongkong brought his girlfriend Guman and the deputy captain Ji Yushin to District E in the city. They drove a large truck filled with food, coal, and other necessities exchanged with points. Their arrival was warmly welcomed and made the people in this area very excited. You see, District E was not a slum, but it was the area with the worst quality of life in the entire Blizzard City. The people living there were all engaged in the lowest level of manual labor. And although Blizzard City still provides good guarantees for the lives of ordinary residents and will not let them starve or freeze, it was different from the other districts and vastly different from the elites in the past society. Guman smiled and asked everyone to line up to receive their daily necessities. There were no useless sundries. Everything they brought were key supplies for survival. At this time, nothing can be more touching than heating resources and food. You see, after the end of the world, Gao Chongkong's profession could not bring much contribution to Blizzard City. Therefore, he once lived in District E for more than a month before awakening his supernatural powers. When he did, he first joined the city guards, then the Yenyun army, and step by step, he became one of the captains of an investigation team due to his extraordinary abilities. So every time he comes back from a mission, he never forgets to come to the place where he used to live to provide some daily necessities to the people in District E. In the crowd, an old man from the Mediterranean who had received the supplies looked at the food and coal in his hands and stared at Gao Chongkong, who was carrying the supplies, with gratitude. It would be great if Captain Gao could be the commander-in-chief of the Jiangnan district in the future. As soon as he said this, everyone around him nodded in agreement. Yes, Captain Gao is kind-hearted and knows how to pity ordinary people like us. If he becomes the commander-in-chief, we wouldn't have such a hard life. Guman heard this and raised a proud smile at the corner of her mouth. She turned to look at the man who was busy carrying supplies on the truck. Who would have thought that a captain of an investigation team, a well-known big shot in Blizzard City, would often do such hard labor? Gao Chongkong heard the crowd's discussions and nervously scratched the back of his head. Please don't say such things. I just did some insignificant things, and you don't have to flatter me too much. Zhu Zheng has made Blizzard City very good. At least everyone can live a stable life. A woman in the crowd lowered her head and shared her thoughts gloomily. Is it really a stable life? Jinling had a population of 15 million at the beginning. After the end of the world, less than 2 million people were selected to enter Blizzard City. Later, if you lose your ability to work due to various problems, you will be ruthlessly expelled. She took a deep breath and tried not to let her emotions break down, because she thought of her parents, a couple in their 70s, who were driven out of Blizzard City for this reason. Everyone fell silent. This kind of thing is really helpless in the end times. Limited resources can only support a limited population. Otherwise, the entire Blizzard City will collapse and everyone will die together. So, with a resolute look, Gao Chongkong spoke up. In the future, the world will slowly get better. Please believe it. Gao Chongkong's words inspired many people and gave everyone confidence. The crowd were completely convinced that their situation would be great if Captain Gao could be the commander-in-chief. Although Zhu Zheng was not bad, he still had to be coerced by those upper-level forces. And the civilians such as themselves always receive the short end of the stick. So after distributing the supplies, Gao Chongkong even asked if there was any place in the community that needs help before taking his leave. The three finally left the district after a busy day. They drove back to District A and found a coffee shop to rest, have some coffee and chat. Ji Yushin leaned on his rattan chair and said with a smile, "We just came back and thought we could rest for a while." As a result, the top management assigned us another task. It seems that the Jiangnan region really can't do nothing without us. Gao Chongkong took a sip of his coffee and stated lightly, "It's just because we happen to be free. If other investigation teams had come back, they would also be the ones to carry out this mission." Gu Man looked at Gao Chongkong's profile and smiled. "This is what they call, it's better to arrive at the right time than to arrive early, right?" Gao Chongkong couldn't help but smile. Yes, sometimes luck is really the key. If we were matched up with the mission in Tianhai City, then the three of them couldn't help but sigh as Gu Man continued. Who could have imagined that a simple mission to eliminate zombies would actually encounter a mutant of Ypsilon level? Bian Junwu died, and the Black Robe team suffered heavy losses. Even if they were assigned to carry out that mission, then it wouldn't have mattered how powerful Gao Chongkong's abilities were. They wouldn't have been able to make up for the gap between him and Ypsilon awakened. At this moment, Ji Yushin whispered to the two of them, "Captain, Sister Gu, once we successfully complete this mission, the Samsara squad will become the leading existence among the 6 major investigation teams. By then, our prestige will reach an unprecedented height. After all, this is to drive out foreign enemies." Gao Chongkong folded his arms and replied lightly, "How can it be that simple? The people above will not give me such a great credit so easily." Ji Yushin disagrees, believing that the higher-ups have no one available now, and it was impossible to mobilize the Yenyun troops to encircle and suppress the enemy, right? Although they are experts in group battles, they are responsible for defending Blizzard City. Zhu Zhang will not let them leave. Except for them, there is no better choice. A wild light began to surge in Ji Yushin's eyes. "Captain, when the time comes, the position of commander of Blizzard City will most likely be yours." Gao Chongkong raised an eyebrow, glanced at Ji Yushin, and turned his head to look at Gu Man smiling next to him. "You think too simply. Compared with other captains, I am just a commoner. Without connections and background, it is difficult to get promoted even if I have made great contributions." Gu Man retorted with a smile and replied that that may not be the case. The current situation is different from the past. In the end times, strength is the most important. The order of the past has been almost broken. Although Blizzard City had not completely collapsed, the previous system, however, cannot always be maintained. "Lao Gao, this is your chance." Ji Yushin agreed and also added with a bright smile, "Yes, Captain. As long as we get rid of Eclipse Moon, our prestige in Blizzard City will reach a very high level. At that time, you can definitely enter the core of power in Blizzard City smoothly." Ji Yushin leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling with a blurred look in his eyes, and it seems that he had already began to imagine those scenes. "At that time, we can break the rules of this world. You represent not only you, but many small people like us who have climbed up from the bottom step by step." The two were keenly aware that if they hadn't awakened their superpowers, they would be just small fries at the bottom of Blizzard City. And those children of powerful families such as Deng Shintong, or those people with backgrounds such as Bian Junwu who came from the army, they can rely on their advantages in life to get the cultivation of various resources in the region at the beginning of the end of the world. Otherwise, why should they be stronger than ordinary mutants? Talent was one aspect and background was another. Gao Chongkong took another sip of his coffee, and with a knowing smile, confidently stated that he will complete this mission by taking down Eclipse Moon. As the scene shifted to the Southern Sea, where the Eclipse group had finally arrived at their destination, the Starry Island. It was an island made up of several islands, and also the domain of the Tianlong pirates. On this day, an icebreaker broke through the waves and came to the headquarters of the Tianlong pirates on an island named Tianlong Island. Before the end of the world, there were many small countries there. But after the end of the world, the order of these small countries collapsed instantly. Strength has become the only criterion for the ruler. Countless mutants swarmed up and began to carve up territories and form forces. And because of the region, most of them became pirates. Half a year has passed, and after continuous wars and annexations, the pirates in the Starry Sea have gradually formed several large forces. The strongest among them is the super-large force called the Tianlong Pirates. The leader of the Tianlong Pirates was Li Fengxian, who was known as the Sea Dragon King. Under his seat, there are a total of 7 fleets, each led by 7 powerful mutants. Feng Guangyuanjin appeared in front of Li Fengxian and many vicious pirates. The interior of Tianlong Island was a huge nest. Li Fengxian sat on a high seat, looking down at the thin man wearing a gray newsboy cap below. "Are you the leader of the Eclipse Moon? It was you who caused such a commotion right down under the nose of the Jiangnan district?" The news of the Eclipse Moon War could not be concealed. And after being deliberately spread by someone with ulterior motives, the whole world has heard of this news. Naturally, it could not escape the eyes and ears of the Tianlong king. If it weren't for this, Feng Guangyuanjin, a mere unknown ronin, would not have the right to be here. As the pirates around him showed him a ferocious expression, Feng Guangyuanjin showed no fear on his face. He confidently replied as a wicked smile formed at the corner of his mouth. "That's right, respected Dragon King. I am the leader of the Eclipse Moon team, Feng Guangyuanjin." Li Fengxian stared at him intently and suddenly laughed. "What a courageous boy you are, coming to Tianlong Island alone. You are really not afraid of death." Suddenly, Li Fengxian's face turned cold and the temperature in the entire cave seemed to drop a few degrees. "How did you find this place? You'd better tell me honestly. Otherwise, this place will become your grave today." The headquarters of the pirate group was their core secret. There were also many islands in the Starry Sea, scattered all over the place. Tianlong Island was in one of the hidden areas, so their headquarters was well hidden. And as long as they hide well, relying on the advantage of the terrain, no force could find them. But Feng Guangyuanjin, a mere ronin, found their headquarters accurately. This has already enraged the Sea Dragon King greatly, his murderous intent evident. The pirates around have already drawn their daggers and guns. Some of them stretched out their tongues and licked their daggers. The salty blood made them excited. As long as Feng Guangyuanjin's answer made them dissatisfied, they would immediately rush up and cut him into pieces. Feng Guangyuanjin turned a blind eye to this murderous intent. "It's very simple. Because I have this ability, as long as I want to find your location, I can definitely find it." Li Fengxian's eyes condensed as he leaned his majestic body on his chair and muttered, "Ability? I see. This world is getting more and more crazy. There are all kinds of strange people appearing, and no one knows what kind of strange abilities they have." Nevertheless, Li Fengxian was not unprepared for this. The location of Tianlong Island had always been based on the Tianlong pirates, although they don't stay in one area for too long. "Ronin, what is your purpose in coming here? Tell me." Feng Guangyuanjin straightened himself and slowly opened his arms. "Honored Celestial Dragon King, I am here to give you a great gift. I want to give the Celestial Dragon Pirates a huge fortune." As soon as these words came out, there was a burst of mocking laughter at the scene. Even the Celestial Dragon King himself laughed. "This guy actually said he would give us a huge fortune? How ridiculous. Who does he think he is? Who does he think we are?" Feng Guangyuanjin didn't care about the laughter. He continued loudly, "Of course I know that gold, silver, and jewelry are worthless now. In this world of ice and snow, weapons, energy, food, and population are the most precious resources." Next to the throne of the Celestial Dragon King, a man with short silver-gray hair pushed his burgundy glasses and said coldly, "Ronin, do you know how big the treasures of our Tianlong pirates are? Looking at the southern seas, the things that they can regard as prey are all in the units of countries. Hunting countries is the big business that will interest them." Feng Guangyuanjin laughed. "Well, what if I invite you to share with me the rich territory of Huashu country, specifically the Jiangnan region?" As soon as these words came out, the laughter on the scene stopped abruptly. The pirates looked at Feng Guangyuanjin like they were staring at a madman. Even Li Fengxian and his deputy Balian frowned. "Is this guy fucking crazy?" Balian asked coldly. Feng Guangyuanjin grinned and replied with a smile, "Of course not. You should know how rich the Jiangnan region is. The resources of any city of theirs are comparable to those of the small countries in your southern sea area. Besides, I believe you have heard of our deeds. We, the 13 people of Eclipse Moon, have left the entire Jiangnan region helpless. We have defeated them twice in a head-on battle." Feng Guangyuanjin's words made Li Fengxian's eyes flashed with a strange light. Of course, he has heard of these things. "I heard that the Jiangnan region was really troubled by your group. However, even if they lost twice in a row, and they only have a few guys left, does it mean that that place was not as strong as imagined anymore?" The facts were in front of them. The leader of Eclipse Moon was still standing here. So it seems that the powerful force the Jiangnan region possess has also suffered a great blow after the end of the world. They can't even eliminate 13 people. Could it be that they are no longer as strong as their Tianlong pirates? But at this time, the captain of the first team, Nero, who has a lifeless eyes and pale skin, spoke with an indifferent tone. "Don't underestimate any powerful country. The foundation they have is not something you can guess. If they are really as weak as you say, why don't you just enjoy the prosperity of Jiangnan district, but come to us for help? A burst of laughter suddenly rang out around. Feng Guangyuanjin smiled and calmly replied, Nero, we have too few people, so there is not much we can do. That's why I came here, hoping to cooperate with you. Feng Guangyuanjin stared at the ambitious pirate king on the throne. Honored celestial dragon king, I don't think you will be content to just roam in this small sea area, right? The ocean is short of supplies and cannot withstand your long-term plunder. But if we can make a lot of money from the rich Jiangnan region, it will be enough for your pirate group to spend for decades. And it can also make your Tianlong pirates famous. He pointed at himself. If you are worried about their strength, I am the best proof. I have proved that they are strong on the outside but weak on the inside, and they are not as strong as the rumors say. Balian scolded. Shut up. You are just a mere wanderer, and you think you can make us serve as your bait? You are really courting death by trying to deceive us with this clumsy trick. Dozens of weapons were suddenly drawn out and aimed at Feng Guangyuanjin. The pirates who were just laughing loudly just a second ago had suddenly changed their faces in an instant. Feng Guangyuanjin, however, remained calm in the face of danger. With his hands leisurely placed inside his pockets, his eyes were solely focused on Li Fengxian. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You have enough power, and I can help you lead the way and avoid the navy. Believe me, if you can't grasp this opportunity, you will never have such a good chance to attack that rich land again. After a moment of silence, Balian spoke up, calling Feng Guangyuanjin stupid. Although he had achieved some small victories in a short period of time, the foundation of a big force was not something that a mere Ronin like him can understand. The Eclipse organization dares to provoke a big force arrogantly, which is tantamount to seeking death. You are an arrogant lunatic, but we are different. Pirates can be crazy, but we are definitely not stupid. Feng Guangyuanjin agreed that he might be a crazy person, but what they can do, the overlord of the Southern Sea area wouldn't dare to do. Li Fengxian stared at Feng Guangyuanjin with a playful look on his face. Your name is Feng Guangyuanjin, right? You are indeed a very interesting guy. Crazy enough. Courageous enough. If a person like you appears in the Southern Sea area, I will definitely unalive you without hesitation. Because you are too courageous, it is very dangerous to keep you as an enemy, and I can't expect your loyalty if I keep you as my subordinate. He waved his big hand at Feng Guangyuanjin. Go back to wherever you came from. I don't accept your opinion. The loud voice of Li Fengxian echoed in the entire cave of Tianlong Island. Feng Guangyuanjin bowed and took a half-step back, a bit disappointed. In the previous battle, they lost 5 members. If they want to continue the landing operation, they must replenish their strength. So he discussed with Jinguji Saikairo to also look for reinforcements elsewhere. The pirates who were rampant in the southern seas were the most suitable partners in his mind. However, the Dragon King refused his proposal mercilessly, without even the slightest hesitation. Feng Guangyuanjin knew that it was useless to continue persuading. As you wish, but he raised his head, with fanaticism in his eyes. I will show you the fire I have set on that land. Stupid Ronin, it seems you don't really understand how terrifying the background of this transcendent force is. Even if an ignorant wanderer like you have great power in this apocalypse, it will amount to nothing in the end, and you will die sooner or later. Obviously, Feng Guangyuanjin failed to instigate the Tianlong pirates. So, with a disappointed look, he turned to leave the cave, believing that the infamous Heavenly Dragon King was nothing but a cowardly pirate. But since he was there, he might as well try to gather some useful information so his trip won't be in vain. However, just as Feng Guangyuanjin walked out of the cave, a strange sight followed his back from the crowd behind him. Li Fengxian immediately noticed that some of his subordinates were tempted. After all, their mortal enemy has always been the navy of a big country, mainly due to the fact that a ship from any big country is equipped with the most advanced weapons and can destroy their huge fleet of old-fashioned miscellaneous brands. As a result, the Tianlong pirates had been active in the Starry Sea, near the coast, but never dare to approach the deep sea area with clear boundaries. Listen to me, all of you guys, the Dragon King roared. Without my permission, no one is allowed to have any form of contact with that group of Ronin again. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. After hearing this command, everyone below hurriedly lowered their heads to show their submission. But mostly in these situations, there's always bound to be someone who gets blinded by greed. And in this case, it was the captain of the 4th Division, Canute. With sharp eyes and a skinny frame like a devil, Canute finds Feng Guangyuanjin to be quite interesting. He quickly sent a message to a subordinate under his division to secretly intercept the Japanese wanderer. Canute believes that if he could cooperate with the Ronin organization to take over Huashu country, the Heavenly Dragon King will definitely look at him with new eyes. Anyway, the moment Feng Guangyuanjin left the cave, Deng Yuena, a member of the 4th Division, secretly intercepted Feng Guangyuanjin in an inconspicuous setting. Curious about Deng Yuena's presence, Feng Guangyuanjin asked which captain sent him, but Deng Yuena simply pulled out a gun from the breast pocket of his heavy jacket and aimed it at the Ronin's head. He playfully replied that if the Ronin Wanderer wants to find out, then he should obediently come with him. Sure, I just hope that you guys won't let me down. A smile flashed in Feng Guangyuanjin's eyes. These bloody fucking pirates will always be the same. He knew that those greedy and arrogant pirates would not be indifferent to his words. No matter how much the Celestial Dragon King forbids, there will always be people who dare to take risks. Otherwise, they are not pirates. Feng Guangyuanjin followed Deng Yuena into a car behind him. Inside, Deng Yuena tossed a blindfold on his lap and simply explained that there were rules for outsiders not to know their location. Of course, Feng Guangyuanjin understood this and simply wore the blindfold without any fuss. Seeing this, Deng Yuena then ordered the chauffeur to move. They wandered around Tianlong Island for a long time before finally coming to a stop at a huge ironclad ship. This was the location of the 4th Division of the Tianlong Pirates, and the huge ironclad ship was the flagship of the 4th Division Captain Canute. Getting out of the car, Feng Guangyuanjin took off the blindfold when he was finally told to do so. He stood face to face with Canute and asked who he was. But the thin, middle-aged man with a hooked nose brushed off the question and asked his own. Ronin, are the words you said in front of the Dragon King true? Is the Jiangnan region really as weak as you said? The grin on Feng Guangyuanjin's face deepened. He opened his arms and said seriously, of course not. If we engage in a head-on confrontation with them, such as directly attacking their headquarters in Blizzard City, then we have no chance of winning. I am very clear about this, but his voice raised several decibels. Their territory is too large. It is larger than an ordinary country, but they don't have enough manpower to defend every piece of land. Feng Guangyuanjin stretched out his hand to Canute. We are not stupid enough to fight them head-on. We just need to keep harassing them and eat away at them bit by bit. Then we can get everything we want. If we, the Eclipse Moon, act on our own, what we will gain will be limited. That's why I came to you for cooperation. With the strength of your Tianlong pirates, you will definitely be able to plunder a lot. Feng Guangyuanjin shrugged his shoulders and said with a little regret, it's a pity that I overestimated the courage of the Tianlong King. Canute's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and he shouted loudly, shut up! Who do you think you are? How dare you judge our king? Seeing this, Feng Guangyuanjin smiled lightly and raised his open palms in a form of an apology. Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone. I just feel regretful that if such a good opportunity is missed, there will be no second time. He maintained his smile and added that it was just difficult for him to find helpers like Canute. Canute narrowed his eyes and folded his arms with worry. If we depart for the Jiangnan region through the southern waters, then our biggest trouble is their navy. Do you have a way to help us bypass their navy's patrol? Of course. Feng Guangyuanjin nodded slightly with a smile. If it can't be done, then how did our Eclipse team manage to land on that land? Inwardly, he knew that with Mayumi Takeuchi, they can avoid all dangers, although Zhang Yi's time is the only exception. Interesting, really interesting. Canute stared at Feng Guangyuanjin with cold eyes for a long time. Then he smiled mischievously. In that case, let's do it together. After hearing Feng Guangyuanjin's explanation, Canute's desire in his heart grew even stronger. He had heard about the Eclipse group making trouble in the Jiangnan region. In his opinion, if a mere 13 Ronin organization could cause a headache for the Jiangnan region, then his powerful 4th Division with thousands of pirates and more than 30 of them being powerful mutants can invade a big country. If he can cooperate with Eclipse Moon and go to that rich land to plunder, his name will be known to the world in the future. It is even possible that he will be valued by the Heavenly Dragon King and become the boss of the 7 ship divisions. Then I wish us a happy cooperation. Feng Guangyuanjin smiled and raised his hand for a gentleman's handshake. But before he finished speaking, a cold pistol was directly aimed closely at his forehead. Don't play tricks with me, otherwise I will kill you off with my own hands. Feng Guangyuanjin ignored the threat and replied that they were partners now, and he doesn't cheat his partners. Meanwhile, as the scene shifted back to Zhang Yi's side, he had just returned to Blizzard City, and in addition to Liang Yu and Flower, he brought Yang Xin Xin along. Zhang Yi was a bit surprised to see a familiar face, in a familiar tailored suit the very moment they exit the subway station. Mr. Zhang Yi, we were sent by Mr. Deng Yuena. He wants to invite you to have lunch with him if that's convenient for you. Another invitation? And this time around, it's from the head of the Deng family. He had no connection with the Deng family. So after a brief thought, he guessed Deng Yuenbu's purpose might be related to his nephew's death. The Deng family, after all, had a great influence in the Jiangnan region. So naturally, he had to give them face. Is it convenient for me to bring a few friends? The guard looked at the two women and nodded slightly. Of course. Everyone, please follow me. His task was just to invite Zhang Yi over. As for whether Zhang Yi brought people or not, it would not affect the main outcome. The three followed him into a car. And as the car drove towards the Deng garden, along the road that Zhang Yi was somewhat familiar with, he silently took out his satellite phone. He gave Liang Yu and Yang Xin a look, and they immediately understood what he meant. This was to communicate through text. The first text was from Zhang Yi, asking about their opinion on the sudden invitation. Do they think the Deng family are well-intentioned, or do they have bad intentions? Liang Yu frowned, thought for a while, and replied that she didn't know. Yang Xin smiled, and she quickly typed 2 words on her phone. Win over. Zhang Yi glanced at her and asked her to elaborate. Yang Xin showed a mysterious smile at the corner of her mouth and explained. According to the current intelligence, there are not many top combat forces in Blizzard City. The known ones are the 6 major investigation team leaders, the director of the operations department Tu Yunlai, and the guard Sun Lushuan beside Zhu Zheng. Based on the management model of Blizzard City, it is unlikely that there are hidden strongmen. Even if there are not many. And the Deng family relies heavily on Deng Shintong, a top ability user, to maintain their Deng family status. But now, Deng Shintong has died in battle. This will have a very serious impact on the Deng family. Coupled with the death of Bian Junwu before, the balance of Blizzard City has serious problems. Perhaps the time for a new reshuffle is coming. The Deng family invited you, big brother, to come over, meaning they intend to win you over and make you their man. Yang Xinxin's analysis was very reasonable, which made Zhang Yi feel a little more relaxed. In the future, top combat power will determine the strength of a force. Ordinary soldiers, even hot weapons, are slowly losing their dominance on the battlefield. If not, how could 13 people of Eclipse Moon be so arrogant in the Jiangnan region? He wants to win me over, right? Zhang Yi frowned and reiterated that he truly doesn't want to get involved in the power struggle in Blizzard City. Yang Xinxin thought for a while and suggested that he could just test the other party's attitude first. Anyway, it is the Deng family who needs your help now. Even if you want to refuse, as long as you leave them room for imagination, they will not make things difficult for you. Zhang Yi sighed heavily in understanding. He still understood the rules of these social etiquettes, but he finds the situation to be extremely funny. It was the end of the world, but they still have to pay attention to the social systems and human relationships. More than half an hour later, the car arrived at Deng Garden. It was still a familiar place, but when Zhang Yi arrived, he felt that it was a bit more desolate and solemn. Even the expressions of the guards of the Deng family seemed to be a bit more serious. The defeat of the God Squad and the death of Deng Shintong cast a heavy haze on the family. And this emotion has spread to this day and is difficult to dissipate. The moment they entered the living room of the main building, they were greeted by dozens of beautiful maids in Cheongsam standing on both sides, respectfully welcoming them. Welcome Mr. Zhang Yi, Miss Yang and Miss Liang. The room was magnificent, and the end couldn't even be seen at a glance. It was hard to imagine how big the space was. Coupled with these beautiful women, Zhang Yi deeply felt Deng Yuenbu's sincerity. Yang Xin, on the other hand, frowned slightly, not liking the Deng family's welcome. She felt that the entire experience was like a beauty trap and too ostentatious. Lian Cheng, dressed in an elegant suit with his elegant temperament and a gentlemanly appearance, officially announced, Mr. Zhang, lovely young ladies, welcome to Deng Garden. Our master has prepared a sumptuous lunch and invites you all to join him. Zhang Yi and the other two followed Lian Cheng silently until he finally opened 2 massive doors to Deng Yuenbu's residence. Zhang Yi felt a little strange. After all, Deng Shintong's body is still warm. So was it really appropriate to make such a lively scene for just an ordinary warehouse manager? Or could it be that the old man likes lively scenes? If it's the latter, then it's understandable. You see, after the Ice Age, many people began to like this flame-like red, because after seeing it, they feel some warmth on the psychological level. Deng Yuenbu, wearing his usual Tang suit, stood near a massive window when Lian Cheng respectfully announced, Mr. Deng, Mr. Zhang Yi and the others are here. Zhang Yi politely greeted Deng Yuenbu and apologized for any inconvenience. Yang Xin and Liang Yu did the same, although their tones sounded indifferent. Deng Yuenbu looked at them with a smile and replied that it was okay. He is actually glad that they accepted his invitation. Come on, please take a seat. Don't be restrained. He gestured to the small round table in front of them with a smile. Zhang Yi, you and my nephew Deng Shuntong are acquainted, right? So, if you don't mind, you can call me Uncle Deng. Zhang Yi was a little surprised. Deng Yuena tried to get closer to him as soon as he came up. It seemed that he was trying to win over Zhang Yi, just like what Yang Xin Xin said. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded slightly. He didn't have an issue in calling Deng Yuena uncle. Besides, he fits the bill anyway. Deng Yuena clapped his hands, and almost immediately, a beautiful maid in a cheongsam came to Zhang Yi's side with a plate. There was a box on the plate. This is a gift for meeting you. I hope you don't mind. Oh, and as for the two women, there will be gifts for them later. Deng Yuen's attitude was directly revealed, and he was almost undisguised in trying to win over Zhang Yi. Uncle Deng, what is this? Zhang Yi remained alert, although he was very curious. What exactly was this gift for? After all, he didn't think he was missing anything now. Deng Yuena saw the disapproval in Zhang Yi's eyes and found it a bit amusing. Poor child. You have suffered more than half a year outside, and you haven't had a good life. The things in it, he pointed to the box, can save you half a year to improve your strength. The expression on the faces of the three, especially Zhang Yi's face, froze for a moment. Really, it can improve my strength? Zhang Yi looked at Deng Yuena in disbelief. Of course, you think that mutants can only improve their strength by devouring the essence of other mutants, right? Zhang Yi smiled and nodded slightly. That's right. Deng Yuena smiled proudly, pointed to the box on the plate and stated calmly. In theory, that's true. But this method is no different from eating wild animals. And the biggest difference between us humans and wild animals is that we know how to use tools. This thing is called Compound X, and it can only be produced by our Deng family. After using it, the strength of a mutant can be quickly improved. Zhang Yi nodded thoughtfully. I understand. It seems this is also the reason why the population of Blizzard City is not too large, but there are a large number of elite mutants, right? Deng Yuena couldn't help but sigh. Yes, the world is vast with countless talented people, but majority of them seems to have gathered in Blizzard City, mainly because once the potential of the mutants here is discovered, they get the best resources to cultivate to become very powerful. Perhaps you have been around mutants who are not weaker than an investigation team leader. However, before they had time to awaken their superpowers, they had died in various crises. Zhang Yi totally agrees. Sure enough, it is very important to be born in a good place. Although he appeared to be calm, Zhang Yi's mind was still on the X compound, so he asked curiously, Uncle Deng, how much can this compound improve a person's strength? Zhang Yi has now reached a bottleneck in his strength, so he was very skeptical about the efficacy of this compound. Deng Yuena replied with his usual smile. Let's put it this way, you know my nephew, right? He was able to grow rapidly to his current strength because of this thing. A look of astonishment flashed across Zhang Yi's eyes. The strength of an investigation captain's level can also be obtained by drugs? Then does this drug also have side effects like the one used by Bian Junwu? Deng Yuena saw that Zhang Yi had some concerns and addressed them immediately. This medicine has no side effects. In fact, the effect of this drug is the same as the co-devouring ability between mutants. It's just that we used scientific means to extract the source of the superpowers so that you can absorb it better. Zhang Yi had never trusted anyone easily. What's more, this was the first meeting between the two. Yet Deng Yuena wants to give him such an expensive gift. The entire scene was like a weasel paying a New Year's greeting to a chicken. Zhang Yi decided to refuse it. Such a gift is too expensive, Uncle Deng, so I dare not accept it. Zhang Yi smiled and declined. Who knows if this thing has any toxins? What if he uses it and is controlled by the Deng family? Deng Yuena understood the situation and spoke in a calm but domineering tone. You are very cautious, and being cautious is a good thing. If not, you probably wouldn't be able to survive in this crisis-ridden outer city area and achieve your current achievements. But I rarely give gifts to others, and no one had refused the gifts I give. This is just a meeting gift. I, Deng Yuena, won't ask anyone to do anything for such a small thing. Hearing this, it would be impolite for Zhang Yi to refuse again. So he placed the box into his alternate space and thanked Deng Yuena for his kindness. Well, you have come from afar, so you must be hungry. Let's eat. Satisfied, Deng Yuena once again clapped his hands, and suddenly more than a dozen maids came in with plates in their hands. Shortly after, the whole table was filled with lavish meals. The Deng family had their own cooks and stored ingredients. Therefore, the food on the table looked particularly appetizing. Zhang Yi was not polite and picked up his chopsticks to eat. But after a few bites, he found that the ingredients were not fresh, which is understandable. After all, no matter how powerful the Deng family was, they can't enjoy a large amount of luxurious fresh food in the end times. So in this regard, Zhang Yi was much better than them. After the meal, Zhang Yi was invited to Deng Yuenbua's study next door, while Yang Xin Xin and Liang Yu followed Lian Cheng to the lounging area opposite next door. In the study, Deng Yuenbua made a few polite remarks and got straight to the point. Zhang Yi, you have no background in Blizzard City. If you want to gain a foothold, you must make some achievements. Zhu Zhang asked you to be the captain of the Tengu squad. Why are you refusing? After a brief consideration, Zhang Yi decided to answer somewhat truthfully. I am used to being free and lazy, doing whatever I want, whenever I want. But if I become a team leader, I have to be controlled by my superiors, which makes me uncomfortable. Deng Yuenbua immediately pointed out that if it's just a matter of being controlled, then even if he was in Tianhai City, he still had to obey the orders of Blizzard City. Hence why he is currently here. Zhang Yi agreed with this assessment but also argued that although that might be the current case, he still had a lot of room for flexibility. Hearing this, Deng Yuenbua was genuinely puzzled. Why was the mindset of most young people nowadays just like yours? They don't seek fame or fortune, they just want to lay low and don't even want the chance to be a leader. Fine then, but if you are asked to be the temporary captain, you will be able to accept it, right? After all, letting you be the captain is the result of many people's joint discussion. Don't worry, as long as you agree to be the temporary captain, I will offer you conditions that you cannot refuse. Zhang Yi frowned slightly, a bit doubtful about this matter as Deng Yuenbua gestured for a cup of tea, poured himself one as well and continued. You mutants from the outer cities have no concept of superpowers and can only blindly use brutal force to improve them, taking many detours. However, my Deng group has been researching the concept of mutation for half a century. This statement took Zhang Yi by surprise. So does that mean mutants also existed half a century ago? Mutation itself is an inevitable thing in the process of biological evolution. It has appeared in every era, but it is only widely known because now is an era of large-scale mutation. So of course, in the past, we studied mutants for the purpose of developing drugs and military use, which made our Deng group a lot of money. We have a mature team that can help you and your partners enhance your strength and develop your potential. What Zhang Yi wanted to know was why Deng Yuenbua was insistent on helping him. Do you want me to become your Deng family's thug or something of that type shit? Because if it's that, then he is sorry but not sorry. He can't do it. Deng Yuenbua laughed lightly when he heard this. Of course not. I wouldn't even have such an idea. After all, if Zhu Zheng's position as investigation team leader wasn't even enough to attract you, then we at the Deng family can't offer a higher price to keep you. Regardless, Zhang Yi wanted to know the real reason, although he could fairly guess by now. What good will it do for Deng Yuenbua to help him? Deng Yuenbua answered truthfully that it was simply to avenge his nephew. Revenge? Zhang Yi inquired. You mean you just want to help me simply to destroy the Eclipse group and make great contributions? Deng Yuenbua remained silent for a brief moment, his face gloomy with a murderous intent clearly evident in his eyes. He stated that the Eclipse group was just a knife that killed his nephew. The real culprit was definitely in Blizzard City. Hearing this, Zhang Yi was genuinely taken aback. Although everything Yang Xin Xin speculated and analyzed the night before was extremely plausible, he still had a sliver of hope that that might not be the case. But now, a big shot like Deng Yuenbua, the head of the Deng family, had confirmed all the speculations. Curious, Zhang Yi wanted to know if Deng Yuenbua knew who succeeded in trying to harm Deng Shintong. With a regretful tone, Deng Yuenbua explained that his nephew had been gifted since childhood, and after the end of the world, he became one of the strongest extraordinary people in the entire Jiangnan region under the cultivation of the Deng family, of course. His future was full of hope, so naturally someone will be jealous of him and use the Eclipse Moon to kill him. Zhang Yi presumed that Deng Yuenbua already knew the culprit, and wondered why the head of the Deng family hadn't taken any action or informed Zhu Zhang, unless the commander-in-chief was the culprit. Deng Yuenbua sighed softly and replied that he didn't know who the culprit was exactly, but he was absolutely sure of one thing, and thus, whoever benefits the most from Deng Shintong's death was the biggest suspect. Everything was exactly as Yang Xin Xin speculated, and Zhang Yi really wasn't able to hide his shocked expression. After all, this meant that the director of the operations department Tu Yunlai, the Samsara squad or other factions in Blizzard City may be the planners of this action. Even Zhu Zhang couldn't be left out and might just be the promoter. Although the conditions Deng Yuenbua was offering to Zhang Yi was indeed very tempting, he still expressed his stance seriously. After all, in order to protect himself and the people around him, he doesn't want to get involved in the internal disputes of Blizzard City. Deng Yuenbua assured Zhang Yi not to worry. He wouldn't ask him to help him deal with anyone, as long as he completes this mission well and do it more perfectly than the Samsara squad. That will be enough. Hearing this, Zhang Yi suddenly realized that Deng Yuenbua's purpose was to use him to block Gao Changkong's path to promotion. So he asked him if he suspected the team leader of the Samsara squad. It's not just Gao Changkong. Deng Yuena replied in a deep voice. This mission must be completed by you, and you must become a banner that the entire city focus on. Someone killed my nephew because they wanted to use this as an opportunity to reshuffle Blizzard City. And I, an old man, will never agree to this. Only after you, an outsider, deal with the Eclipse group, will the pattern of Blizzard City not change greatly. Zhang Yi did not completely believe the old guy's words. After all, the other party was a millennium-year-old fox, and was many times better than him in playing these influence and power games, so believing his words might lead to his downfall. Nonetheless, Zhang Yi wanted clarification. You mean to say that you will help me and my companions improve our strength just so that I could take down the Eclipse Moon and make great contributions? In doing so, all the credit will be prevented from falling into the hands of others. Yes, that's right. Deng Yuena smiled and nodded slightly. Now, whoever takes down the Eclipse Moon will get the highest prestige in Blizzard City. Obviously, it's because they're foreigners, so they are very special. I believe you understand this by now. Of course he does, but that wasn't the issue. The explanation of being the banner of focus was what was barely acceptable to Zhang Yi. Regardless, he was very interested in what Deng Yuena mentioned about helping his team members improve their strength. So how are you going to help us improve our strength? Zhang Yi asked curiously. Is it going to be the use of that X compound? Deng Yuena smiled a little cunningly and replied, that thing doesn't have much effect on you, so it's meant for people around you. Huh? So this thing doesn't work for me? Indeed, you have gone through many battles and have actually absorbed the essence of many mutants. I am very surprised to say this, but it is difficult for the resources of the outer cities to cultivate mutants of your level. However, you did it. This has to be said to be a miracle. And although I don't know what adventures you have experienced, you have obviously reached a bottleneck period at the moment. At this stage, it is difficult to improve your strength by swallowing the essence of mutants. So, of course Compound X can't do it either. Deng Yuena picked up his celadon teacup from the table next to him and explained. It's just like this teacup. It only has this much capacity and can only hold this much water. No matter how hard you pour water into it, it will just overflow. Zhang Yi quickly understood the meaning of Deng Yuena's words. So, you want to increase my capacity? Deng Yuena nodded with satisfaction. Yes, that's right. The figure of Deng Shintong flashed through Zhang Yi's mind. And with a playful smile, he immediately understood something. You haven't mastered this method yet, have you? Because if you have already mastered it, Deng Shintong will not only be at the Delta level. Speaking of Deng Shintong, Deng Yuena sighed again. My nephew did indeed reach a bottleneck at Delta level. And we have been trying to break through this biological boundary so that we can produce more powerful mutations, but the genetic field was the domain of the gods. It is not so easy for mortals to touch it. Deng Yuena took a sip of his tea and continued calmly. It's the same for you, isn't it? Even if your strength is a little worse than that of an investigation team leader, it is extremely difficult to improve it in a short period of time. Therefore, improving your companions is the most cost-effective way. As he placed his celadon teacup back on the coffee table, his eyes darted towards the far opposite side at Liang Yu, who was resting with her eyes closed in the lounge next door. Zhang Yi followed his gaze and did the same as he continued. To forcibly increase the strength of a mutant, the individual must have a strong enough container and a large enough volume. Otherwise, he or she will not be able to withstand the huge energy infusion within a short period of time and would collapse. Also, this experiment is not something that everyone can do. You must choose someone with excellent qualifications and a firm mind to do it. The martial artist next to you is a piece of pure unpolished jade. If you can develop her abilities, I believe she will not be inferior to you, and can become a good helper exclusive to you. With Deng Yuena's ability, it is very simple to investigate Liang Yu's identity and the 3-generational martial arts background. So how about it, Zhang Yi? Do you want to accept my help? This will only benefit you, not harm you. In order to deal with the next battle, you also need someone you can trust. Zhang Yi stared at Deng Yuena with narrowed eyes and took a sip of his tea. Can he trust Deng Yuena? It's hard to say, but it's obvious that this is a very good opportunity. If Deng Shintong hadn't died, Deng's group would not have helped him. It would be a pity if he missed it. Deng Yuena leisurely got up, picked up the teapot and slowly poured his guest another cup of tea. He did not urge Zhang Yi and even added considerately, this matter truly need to be carefully considered. After all, you don't have much friendship with the Deng family, so it is normal for you to suspect us. But this is indeed a rare opportunity for you. I hope you can think about the future and grasp it. Zhang Yi took a deep breath and leaned his folded arms on the coffee table. I need to think about it, but it won't take too long. Please give me some time. Deng Yuena smiled and agreed with a slight nod. Of course, that's fine. Zhang Yi got up and quickly came to the lounging room next door. He couldn't make up his mind, so he decided to find Xin Xin to discuss it. In the lounging room, he asked the two to come over and quietly discuss the matter. The opportunity cannot be missed, and he didn't want to delay for too long. After all, their enemy might come back at any moment, so time was very important to make a decision, and be quick about it. After listening to Zhang Yi's statement, Liang Yu was immediately moved. The Deng family must have mastered a relatively comprehensive genetic technology about mutants. After all, it's widespread that the genetic drugs in Blizzard City were developed with their help. Liang Yu was eager to improve her strength. She was willing to give it a try. She will bear the risks herself. And if it works with no side effects, the others can try it too. Zhang Yi glanced at her and asked with concern, "Have you always been so brave?" Inwardly, Zhang Yi really didn't know what to say to Liang Yu. After all, she had always had an inexplicable sense of justice and dedication in her heart. But in Zhang Yi's opinion, it's a bit too much to seriously put her life on the line. Liang Yu sighed softly and stated helplessly, "What can we do? We are about to go to war with the Eclipse group again. If we don't improve our combat power, we will only hold you back." Liang Yu thought of the previous battle and how she was just a bystander. If she hadn't been with Zhang Yi, could she have defeated any of the mutants of Eclipse Moon? At this time, Xin Xin also spoke up after a careful consideration. "I think it is not necessarily impossible to accept the conditions they proposed." "Oh? Xin Xin, care to explain?" Zhang Yi looked at her as she shares her thoughts. "The Deng family has no reason to harm us. And even if they do, at the very least, they can't enact on it at the moment. Right now, Blizzard City needs your ability, and you have accepted this mission, so they have to protect you even more. You're their best shot at success when it comes to finding the culprit involved in Deng Shintong's death. So they will do their best to help you defeat Eclipse Moon to save the face of the entire Jiangnan region." There was another thing that Xin Xin didn't say. Even if the other party would use tricks, as long as the person who went was Liang Yu instead of Zhang Yi, the risk was acceptable. In her eyes, anything that didn't involve Zhang Yi directly was a small matter. Since Xin Xin was also okay with accepting help from the Deng family, Zhang Yi decided to cooperate with them. After all, if Liang Yu succeeds, the others might be able to become stronger in this way as well. Zhang Yi returned to Deng Yuen's study with Liang Yu in tow. "We are willing to accept the help of the Deng family, but I want to be frank with you." Zhang Yi's eyes were filled with a deep warning. "You took the initiative to help us so we both can get what we need. But we don't owe you anything. I am very grateful for your help, but if I find out you took this opportunity to secretly do something to my companion, then..." Zhang Yi's voice turned cold. "I won't pretend that nothing happened." "Of course." Deng Yuenbo smiled and slowly placed his teacup on the table. Liang Yu was very determined, and she thanked Deng Yuenbo for his generosity. Deng Yuenbo's eyes lit up when he looked at Liang Yu, as if he had seen the light of an unpolished jade. Zhang Yi discussed the specifics that were non-negotiable with Deng Yuenbo. He wants to contact Liang Yu every day, and this must be guaranteed. Deng Yuenbo had no problem with this and nodded slightly. "You are very cautious, Mr. Zhang, but I sincerely want to help you. If you are worried, I can even allow you to live in Deng Garden and stay with her." Zhang Yi thought about it and finally rejected the proposal. The current situation in Blizzard City was chaotic and unclear, and he didn't want to do something that will obviously make people misunderstand. "In fact, you can also try our packages to improve your capabilities. Maybe there is still a lot of room for your upper limit." Zhang Yi smiled and shook his head slightly. "That's not necessary." Deng Yuenbo smiled, not surprised with this response. "If you figure it out, you can come to me at any time. I believe you will come back." Zhang Yi said a few polite words and avoided the topic as the two said their farewell. Lian Cheng, with his usual respectful demeanor, led the way as Zhang Yi and Xin Xin left Deng Garden. In the study, Deng Yuenbo sat there and stared at Zhang Yi's departing figure with a solemn look. "This kid is really cautious and admirable. If you could be one-third as cautious as him, then you wouldn't have ended up like this." Deng Yuenbo's voice was full of regret as he said this. But at this time, behind him, a male silhouette suddenly appeared on the wall, and a deep voice immediately came from behind. "This guy is really hard to figure out." Hearing this voice, Deng Yuenbo glanced behind him and asked curiously, "Oh? Is this why you think so highly of him? Do you really think he can beat Gao Changkong?" Deng Yuenbo couldn't help but doubt Zhang Yi. Although he performed very well in the last siege against Eclipse Moon, he was only dealing with minor characters, and even picked up 2 residual blood. However, the male silhouette on the wall insisted that Zhang Yi would be worth it. Otherwise, with Deng Yuenbo's identity, how could he be so attentive to Zhang Yi? Which person in Blizzard City doesn't want to get technical support from their Deng family? The deep voice continued, "Don't underestimate him. His upper limit is definitely not below the level of the 6 captains. In fact, it may be higher. Hearing this, Deng Yuen's eyes flashed with astonishment. The 6 captains of Blizzard City's investigation teams all possess the strength of peak Delta level capabilities that have been developed to the extreme. So if Zhang Yi's upper limit was still above them, then doesn't that mean he's a potential Epsilon level candidate? The voice behind the wall was silent for a moment, and then stated leisurely as the figure's half-hidden face came to view. We only have a superficial understanding of mutations. Even if the Deng family has been studying the field of genes for half a century, we can only see a hazy shadow. That is the realm of gods after all. So how can mortals like us touch it? However, when I saw him fighting in Jiangning City, I realized that everyone underestimated him. He was like a huge dark void, an abyss, utterly bottomless. So, for such a person, we can only win him over, and we can't let him become the enemy of the Deng family. Deng Yuen's eyes became hot. He knew that the most expensive thing in the 21st century was talent. Rare, unknown, unlimited, and unfathomable talent. Especially after the end of the world, if you can invest in a top-level mutant, the profit will definitely be 100 times or even 1,000 times over. At this moment, Deng Yuenbo made up his mind to invest in Zhang Yi and make him a member of his side. Since Zhang Yi's background was as simple as a blank sheet of paper and had yet to join a force in Blizzard City, now was undoubtedly the best time to win him over. In terms of background, the only person who can compare and compete with him in the entire Jiangnan region was Zhu Zhang, the Supreme Commander. This old fox concluded that the only way to win Zhang Yi over was to make him stronger and reduce his dependence on Zhu Zhang, so that he and the Deng family can get closer to him. Meanwhile, as the two arrived in the villa in Area A, Zhang Yi carefully checked and found no surveillance equipment inside. Zhang Yi leaned against the back of the sofa in a leisurely half-lying posture with Yang Xin Xin sitting close to him. Flower squinted her eyes and slept on Zhang Yi's lap very comfortably. As he thought of Liang Yu, who was undergoing genetic experiments at the Deng family, Zhang Yi was still a little worried. I always feel that the Deng family treats me too well. Deng Yuenbo's explanation was far-fetched and did not completely convince me. Yang Xin Xin's lips curled up slightly. She supported herself on the backrest of the sofa with one arm and looked at Zhang Yi with admiration and love. Big brother, there is one thing you haven't figured out. Really? What is it? Yang Xin Xin pointed out an obvious trait Zhang Yi seems to always forget. And thus, his big brother was too cautious and always tend to think pessimistically. And he forgets that he is now a top mutant in the entire Jiangnan region. People like him will always be respected wherever they go, and all the major forces will try their best to win over. Now that the Deng family has lost its top combat power, doing this is equivalent to showing goodwill towards you, and may even lead to building a good relationship with you in the future, even if there was no Eclipse Moon mission. Such a simple truth. Can't you understand it? Zhang Yi's mind suddenly became clear. He couldn't help but sigh. I have survived the vicious struggle between people until now, and I almost forgot the rules of civilized society. Blizzard City still retains its civilized state, so there are still human relationships, instead of just relying on fists to do the talking. He flipped his hand and took out the X compound that Deng Yuenbo gave him from his alternate space. If this drug can truly awaken the potential of mutants, which is a desire at the genetic level, then Zhang Yi can imagine how valuable this medicine is. He even had an urge to use it, but out of caution, he didn't dare to do so. After thinking about it, he chose to call Bailey Chongqing to ask. Not long after, he answered the phone. Zhang Yi exchanged a few pleasantries and got straight to the point. Are the research results of Deng's group in genetic medicine very impressive? Do they have any dark history in medicine? Bailey Chongqing calmly replied from that other end. Let me tell you this, at present, Blizzard City has to rely on the Deng family for most of its genetic medicine field. And now, with many experiments, the medicine has become mature. I am the third batch of drug experimenters. Everything is normal at the moment, and there are no adverse reactions. Zhang Yi then asked the name of the drug Bailey Chongqing used. Bailey Chongqing thought about it. Zhang Yi was now half of his own. Even if he is unwilling to accept the jurisdiction of the Jiangnan district, he joined Tengu to carry out the task of fighting the Eclipse group, which proves that he was trustworthy. That drug is called Compound Number 6. Compound Number 6, a term Zhang Yi had never heard of, but he soon understood it. Compound X is a unique technology of the Deng family, and even the people in Blizzard City cannot get it. Thanks, I understand now. Zhang Yi ended the call, thought about it, and suppressed his urge to use the injection. It was better to wait until Liang Yu's experiment was over and observed. Regardless of whether there are side effects or not, it is better not to use it. Caution should be put first, so he better be careful. That very day, Zhu Zhang personally emailed Zhang Yi to come to his office in the afternoon. Seeing this, He knew Deng Yuena had already informed Zhu Zhang that he'd agreed to be the captain of the Tengu squad. Zhang Yi didn't rest much and met Zhu Zhang in his office shortly after. Inside the commander's office, Zhu Zhang smiled proudly, looking at Zhang Yi with full satisfaction, just like he did back then with Deng Shintong. Although Zhu Zhang was very surprised and didn't know what conditions Deng Yuena used to convince Zhang Yi, he was not angry. In short, as long as Zhang Yi agreed to serve as the captain of the Tengu squad, it would be the best news for the major forces in Blizzard City. I heard from Deng Yuena that you agreed to be the captain of the Tengu team. Zhang Yi gave a half-assed salute on his chest and stated proudly, "For the Jiangnan region, for Blizzard City, for the glory of the Hua people, and rebuilding the glory of Huashu country is our obligation. I thought about it and realized that this is my only chance in this life to sacrifice my life for my country." Zhu Zhang coughed slightly and silently pleaded for Zhang Yi to stop with his cringe performance. "That's enough, Zhang Yi. I almost begged you before, but you didn't agree. Now you act like a hot-blooded man. Who are you trying to show off to?" Anyway, Zhu Zhang said to Zhang Yi seriously, "Since you have accepted the position of captain, you must assume the corresponding responsibilities. The remnants of the God team and the Black Robe team will be handed over to you for management. These mutants are all unruly, especially the members of the God team. As the team leader, you must integrate the team well and stop acting like a lone wolf. But as an investigation team captain, you can also enjoy a very high authority. Lan Xinxing will send the authority description to your communication device later." Zhang Yi had no objection to these. However, after thinking about it, he made two requests. "I brought some mutants here and I hope to add them to the team. After all, temporary staff can also enjoy the rights of regular staff, such as battle clothes." Zhang Yi was not too greedy, and only wants a set of black battle clothes each. Zhu Zhang smiled and nodded slightly. "That's no problem. As the captain, you still have the power to appoint your confidants." Zhang Yi continued, "This team is temporarily formed. I also said that I will be the captain temporarily. When the mission is over, I will still return to Tianhai City. Therefore, I don't want my personal information to be exposed too much. Can I act under a code name instead of my real name? It is important that he hides his strength." But after this battle, Zhang Yi's name will definitely be paid attention to by many forces. With just his name, major organizations in the world can quickly strip all his information from birth to now. After all, personal information contains his weaknesses, and it is possible that a small problem will lead to his death. After listening to this, Zhu Zhang thought for a moment and murmured, "The idea you proposed was actually mentioned by someone when the leaders of several regions were briefing not long ago. We do need to compile code names for core combat personnel to ensure the confidentiality of personal information. This should be considered common sense. Even in the Army, Special Forces soldiers have action codes. Not to mention those special staff, most of them use code names or pseudonyms to ensure that their identities are not leaked." Zhang Yi asked if it was okay. He just want an unostentatious code name. Zhu Zhang smiled and nodded. "Of course, in fact, the region has already started code name operations. We have basically set the rules for code names." He touched his chin and continued, "Well, the current decision is to use characters in ancient mythology as code names. In fact, everyone at the level of investigation team leader has their own code name, which is an official code name. I can get one for you." Zhang Yi thought about it and made a request. "I hope to be given an inconspicuous code name. Not too strong, not too weak, and not too famous. Just the kind that you can tell at a glance that it has no presence." Zhu Zhang knew Zhang Yi's character, so he nodded. "Okay, I'll check the list for you later to see if there are any code names that can be used. As for contacting the members of the Tengu squad, Lan Xinxing and Bailey Chongqing will contact you." Zhang Yi nodded in acceptance, said his farewell and left the office. Zhang Yi is very smart. With him as the captain of the Tengu squad, the next problem can be easily solved. Behind him, Sun Lushuan spoke up. "In this way, no one in Blizzard City can shake your authority. After the mission of encircling and suppressing Eclipse Moon is completed, we will disband the organization of the Tengu squad, and then let Zhang Yi leave Blizzard City. This is the best ending." Sun Lushuan looked at Zhu Zhang and asked curiously, "But, by then, the Tengu squad will have no captain." Zhu Zhang's mouth slowly rose with a smile. "Don't worry, I already have the most suitable candidate." Shortly after Zhang Yi left, he called Zhu Zhang and reported that he chose the codename Chaos. Zhu Zhang was delighted with this prospect. Judging from the choice of Zhang Yi's codename, he was too steady, so steady that he doesn't want him to leave Blizzard City if he successfully complete his task. Zhu Zhang wants to take Zhang Yi under his command, train him to become a capable general and for his position as well. Not long after Zhang Yi left the combat center and arrived at his villa, Bailey Chongqing paid him a visit. The moment he opened the door and invited him in, Bailey Chongqing congratulated Zhang Yi. He had finally become the captain of an investigation team. There was a lot of emotion in his eyes. Thinking about it, it is also unprecedented that Zhang Yi was promoted to the captain of an investigation team as a mutant from the outer city. Zhang Yi noticed Bailey Chongqing's uneasiness and guessed something had happened, so he asked if Bailey Chongqing's position as captain was gone. Originally, I was only a temporary captain. Now I have figured it out. Don't take on a job that you don't have the skills and strength to do. Although I have been the captain of the investigation team for a while, no one really treated me as a captain. It's easier now. Zhang Yi sat beside him, poured Bailey Chongqing and himself a cup of tea, and casually stated that Bailey Chongqing can't blame him for his demotion. Right? Of course, he doesn't blame him. And fortunately enough, his family's living conditions had not changed. Zhang Yi placed his arm around Bailey Chongqing and stated that he was only a temporary captain. Once the Eclipse Moon mission is over, the Tengu squad may be disbanded. I will also step down and recommend you to continue to be the captain. After all, we are familiar with each other. Who else can I help if I don't help you? And it's easy to get things done with someone above, so of course he has to take care of Bailey Chongqing. Bailey Chongqing didn't comment. He had experienced this kind of thing once and gained enough experience. Anyway, you have just become the investigation team leader, and there are some things you don't understand yet. The headquarters asked me to introduce you to the duties and powers of the investigation team leader. By the way, there are two very important intelligence to give you. When Zhang Yi heard the word intelligence, his face became serious. What information? Bailey Chongqing took out his satellite phone and sent Zhang Yi a file containing two separate documents. The first file was not very important. It was simply the personal information of the members of the Tengu team. As the captain, Zhang Yi needs to understand the abilities of his team members before he can command them reasonably. Bailey Chongqing stated casually, "As for our Black Robe Squad, we have no objection to you being the captain, but the God Squad needs you to show some authority. Since Deng Shentong had a very high prestige, they became arrogant. So they may be unwilling to accept the management of you, a foreigner from the outer city." Hearing this, Zhang Yi turned to him with a strange look. If the people of the Celestial God team really doesn't accept his management, then that's their problem. And about educating them, they just have to wait and see how they respond. Anyway, what about the other information? Bailey Chongqing waved off his captain's strange look and replied that the second file was sent to the headquarters by Deng Shentong before his death, and it happens to contain the core secrets about Eclipse Moon. In other words, these information were exchanged for Deng Shentong's life. Zhang Yi's face became a little more solemn. He really knew nothing about Fengguangyuanjin, the leader of Eclipse Moon. His abilities, characteristics, and strength were all a mystery to him. And although Deng Shentong lost to him with his strength, he would definitely be able to force Fengguangyuanjin to reveal enough trump cards. This information was extremely critical. Zhang Yi took out a laptop from his alternate space and stated calmly, "Let's watch it on a computer, it's more convenient." He also called Yang Xin Xin over to the living room. He wants to show her the file so she can help them analyze it. Yang Xin Xin agreed to Zhang Yi's request and hurried over in a flash, hugging her bodyguard who happens to be sleeping peacefully. "Big brother Zhang, what file do you want me to see?" Zhang Yi waved at her to come take a seat so they can watch the video together. The three sat together on the sofa with a serious look and played the video. However, the earlier footage of the video turned out to be blank. This is because Deng Shentong used his ability to distort the light, causing any recording device to be unable to capture accurate images. Only sound could be heard. But according to the few dialogues between the two, some information were obtained. The three clearly heard Fengguangyuanjin admitting his ability to be rebirthed after any death, and Deng Shentong's smug comment about just killing him a few more times. Immortality? This is indeed a very troublesome ability. Zhang Yi frowned slightly. How can they deal with a person who can't be killed? Although Zhang Yi doesn't believe that there are really people who can't die. Every time Fengguangyuanjin regenerates, he must consume superpowers or other things, right? And if they can find out the limit of his rebirth, they should be able to deal with him quickly. And from the sound of the battle, it can be heard that he was not much inferior to Deng Shentong in close combat. After a long time, the white light that enveloped everything slowly disappeared, and what was displayed on the screen was an endless red flame. Zhang Yi saw Deng Shentong in pain and surrounded by these flames. He also saw the horrible figure wrapped in flames as the leader of the Eclipse group. Fengguangyuanjin grinned and approached Deng Shentong with the confidence of a victor. Even so, Deng Shentong still did not lose the ability to resist. The white light blessed by the holy body competed with the phoenix flames, and he was also fighting fiercely with Fengguangyuanjin. The group listened to Deng Shintong's monologue and analysis, contemplating on how he shouldn't lose. He was obviously stronger than Fengguangyuanjin despite his abnormal ability. Was he really immortal? No, this is absolutely impossible. There is no carbon-based organism in this world that cannot be killed. There must be something I haven't discovered yet. Oh, so that's how it is. I understand. I understand everything now. There is a traitor inside Blizzard City. Someone leaked my ability. When Zhang Yi heard this from Deng Shintong, he couldn't help but tighten his grip on the cup. His sword eyebrows rose involuntarily, and his suspicion was infinitely magnified. Inside Blizzard City, there was actually a national-level traitor. Young Xin Xin stared at the screen with a faint gaze, but her expression was unusually calm. Zhang Yi knew that she was definitely thinking frantically about this matter. Bailey Chongqing, on the other hand, looked normal, and it's obvious that this was not the first time he had watched this video. Zhang Yi silently took a sip of his tea, knowing full well that the top leaders of Blizzard City must have seen the video so many times, especially Zhu Zhang and Deng Yuena, and they both strongly suspect that there is a traitor in Blizzard City. So that's one of the reasons they actively recommended Zhang Yi to be the captain of the Tengu team. Or are they planning to use him to lure out the traitor? No! Zhang Yi realized that there was no point in guessing like a headless fly. As an outsider, he didn't know the internal affairs of Blizzard City. He didn't even know about the power struggles of several major factions in the city either, so he might as well try his best to avoid being involved. Zhang Yi quickly retracted his thoughts and continued to watch the video. In the video, Deng Shintong was obviously shaky and couldn't hold on. Facing Fengguangyuanjin, who could be resurrected from the dead, Deng Shintong had no way to beat this mutant in that moment. But Fengguangyuanjin seemed to know his abilities and even his attack methods very well. In the end, Deng Shintong lost the strength to support his body and fell into the ruins. His weak voice stammers a little as he tries to get some details across. Listen, I know his abilities. He can see through the future and see how I attack. Remember this and be careful about it. The law of cause and effect must be used to deal with him. In the footage, a huge flaming fist hit his face. Let Zhang Yi. Deng Shintong left these 3 words hanging in the air before the entire footage goes completely blank, then ends. Bailey Chongqing explained that Deng Shintong made the decision to blow himself up at that moment, so they truly didn't know what his last statement was all about. And about blowing himself up, every captain-level figure is required to have this bomb if they chose to self-destruct or die in the custody of the enemy. Deng Shintong's video data ended there. Zhang Yi held his chin and carefully analyzed what he'd learned so far. The latter part of the video left by Deng Shintong revealed too much information, and it seems Fengguangyuanjin can see through Deng Shintong's future, meaning it's possible that he could see through his opponent's future. Although Zhang Yi hadn't figured out how this cheat ability works, but combining it with the immortal attribute, the outcome was simply despairing. And his last incomplete sentence about him had forcefully pushed him in front of the high-level officials of Blizzard City. Anyway, about the law of cause and effect, Zhang Yi didn't fully understand this aspect about himself as well. Could it be that he was reincarnated because he awakened a special co-ability that he had not yet discovered? And if that's the case, should he go to the Deng group and ask them to help him find it? At this time, Bailey Chongqing's voice echoed in his ears. What do you think after watching this? Zhang Yi turned his head to look at him and smiled faintly. I have so many ideas. However, I didn't expect the opponent to be so troublesome. Bailey Chongqing then questioned curiously. Deng Shintong mentioned at the end that you can deal with Fengguangyuanjin. Zhang Yi simply replied that Deng Shintong didn't finish his statement, so Bailey Chongqing shouldn't speculate. Well, 5 people in Eclipse Moon were killed, 4 of whom died in your hands. Now, it is basically certain that the other side has a mutant who can predict the future. If you didn't affect the cause and effect, how could you have killed 4 of them? Hearing this, Zhang Yi didn't get ahead of himself and pointed out that that alone wasn't enough. Even if he'd managed to kill 4 people before, how can they win against someone who can't be killed? How is he going to kill someone who can be reborn continuously? Bailey Chongqing then suggested the possibility of capturing Fengguangyuanjin inside Zhang Yi's alternate space and sealing him there. Zhang Yi explained calmly, I'm afraid that won't work. The alternate dimension does not have the ability to actively collect living things. It is driven by thoughts, and my thoughts will only be effective against dead things. As for living people, unless they are willing to enter my alternate space, they cannot be forcibly collected. Bailey Chongqing slapped his thigh and stated in excitement when he heard this explanation. He believes their job was still easy. They will just break Fengguangyuanjin into pieces, and then throw him into the alternate dimension. That should be enough, right? Zhang Yi looked at Bailey Chongqing deeply. Are you speaking human language? Do you think I'm Deng Shintong? Deng Shintong can kill Feng Guangyuanjin dozens of times, because he has an extremely powerful attack power. But Zhang Yi has the complete opposite, which was extremely good defense. It's difficult for him to kill Feng Guangyuanjin even for once. Not to mention Feng Guangyuanjin's ability to predict the opponent's actions. It's hard to say whether it will work on Zhang Yi. As the two were discussing this matter, Yang Xin Xin suddenly spoke up and shared her thoughts as they ponder. I remember that when Deng Shintong and Feng Guangyuanjin started fighting, the witch Takeuchi Mayumi was also present. Zhang Yi and Bailey Chongqing looked at her. That's right, so what? Are you trying to say that she had an influence on the outcome of the battle? Feng Guangyuanjin's abilities are special. Immortal regeneration, phoenix flames, and super strong physique. And according to our understanding of superpowers, he can't have time-related abilities at the same time. So I guess this ability was given to him by Mayumi Takeuchi. Yang Xin raised 3 of her right fingers and continued. In other words, as long as Mayumi Takeuchi is killed first, Feng Guangyuanjin will lose at least 30% of his combat effectiveness. This suggestion instantly opened up new ideas for Zhang Yi. It is indeed a possibility with a very high probability. The group discussed this matter and obtained a lot of information from the images left by Deng Shintong. Bailey Chongqing smiled and stated calmly, "In fact, you don't need to put too much pressure on yourself. The core significance of your action this time is to block the predictive ability of the Eclipse Moon Priestess. As for dealing with Feng Guangyuanjin, there are more suitable candidates than you." Zhang Yi's eyes condensed. "You mean Gao Changkong?" Bailey Chongqing nodded without hesitation. Gao Changkong's ability is actually very suitable for dealing with Feng Guangyuanjin. Of course, I can't tell you what his ability is now, but if my guess is correct, he will be the leader of this operation. And you will act more in coordination with him, just like before. Bailey Chongqing was Gao Changkong's friend and also his fan. Coupled with his understanding of Gao Changkong's abilities and his partial understanding of Zhang Yi's abilities, he firmly believes that the headquarters will use Gao Changkong as the leader to carry out the next mission to eliminate Eclipse Moon. Zhang Yi looked dim and did not refute Bailey Chongqing's words. Theoretically speaking, there is nothing wrong with what Bailey Chongqing said. He is just a soldier after all, and he doesn't understand what power struggle was. People like him just have to do things according to the requirements of their superiors. Unlike Zhang Yi, who have to plan 3 steps before taking a step. It's so tiring. Anyway, although Gao Changkong does have better combat qualities and command capabilities than Zhang Yi, his identity destined him to be unable to be the leader of this operation. Being too successful and outshining the master is the biggest taboo for subordinates throughout history. To put it bluntly, even if Gao Changkong made the greatest contribution at this time, Blizzard City would focus on promoting Zhang Yi's achievements instead of him. Zhang Yi ended the discussion and was about to dismiss Bailey Chongqing when an idea struck him like a thunderclap. "By the way," he said excitedly, "I am now the captain of the Tengu squad, so I can receive captain-level equipment and weapons, right?" He pointed at Yang Xin and continued, "I have 3 helpers with me, and they will also be incorporated into the Tengu squad for the time being. I have already told Zhu Zhang about this, so they need to receive equipment." Bailey Chongqing nodded slightly. "That's no problem. Just let me know what equipment you need and I'll ask someone to send it over later." The smile on Zhang Yi's face suddenly turned devious. "No, let's go by ourselves. After all, I need a lot of weapons and equipment." Bailey Chongqing stared at Zhang Yi with a strange smile and seemed to guess what this unscrupulous guy was going to do. He just hopes Zhu Zhang can take it. And speaking of the devil, not long after, Zhu Zhang, who was still working in his office, received an urgent call from the quartermaster. And as expected, Zhang Yi was using his spatial abilities to collect a large number of weapons. Apparently, the quantity was beyond what the quartermaster can exaggerate. As he spoke, he couldn't help but turn his head to look at Zhang Yi, who was busy collecting a lot of goods into his alternate space. After being a quartermaster for so many years, this was the first time he encountered such a way of receiving supplies. He pleaded with Zhu Zhang that it seems that the warehouse was in urgent need of weapons refill. Zhu Zhang thought about it and shook his head with a smile. This kid really has the spirit of, if you don't take advantage of an opportunity, then you are a bastard. Forget it, just give him as many as he needs. Anyway, they are just ordinary hot weapons. After the end of the world, the power of these weapons has been greatly weakened, and they are not difficult to manufacture. The moment Zhu Zhang gave his approval, the quartermaster started suggesting other heavy artilleries. Zhang Yi can go take a look at some of the heavy machine guns they have in the back. Zhang Yi's eyes lit up at the thought of this. "Really?" he exclaimed. "Then I will take it all." A while later, Zhang Yi returned to the villa in Area A after his free shopping spree. As he laid in bed leisurely, Zhang Yi examines the large amount of weapons and equipment with satisfaction. Later, Zhu Zhang will formally form the Tengu squad and notify all places of the appointment of Zhang Yi as the captain. Zhang Yi doesn't care about these things. The false reputation of Blizzard City itself was not something he valued. However, he didn't know the current situation concerning Liang Yu and was a bit worried. Although rationally, he understood that the Deng family would not do anything to her at this time, but his long-standing habit of being cautious made him uneasy and always operate under a sense of crisis. Coincidentally, Liang Yu called Zhang Yi in that very moment. Zhang Yi quickly answered the call. Liang Yu, how are you now? Do you feel anything unusual? On the other end of the phone, Liang Yu was wearing her usual outfit, but was surrounded by a dozen staff members wearing white protective clothing. Also, just behind her was a huge white lab cabin. The staff were prepared for the final work. Liang Yu felt the worry in Zhang Yi's tone and was secretly pleased. The preliminary preparations have been completed. Next, I will enter the lab cabin they prepared for me. The experiment will last for 3 days before I can come out. I won't be able to contact you during this time. Zhang Yi was silent for a moment at the other end of the line, wanting to say something like, take care, but he felt it was not appropriate. After holding it in for a long time, he said, I'll wait for you to come back. Liang Yu's smile immediately deepened. Okay. After the two of them had a simple conversation, Liang Yu handed the phone to a female staff member, who sealed it and put it away. Then a male staff member asked and gestured for Liang Yu to lie down in the lab cabin. Liang Yu nodded slightly and did as she was told. Outside the laboratory on the second floor, Deng Yuena, Lian Chang and the person in charge of the laboratory were watching this scene. The person in charge asked Deng Yuena respectfully, Chairman, do we really have to follow the A-level source supply? That level of experiment consumes a lot of our energy, which is second only to the training of the young master. Deng Yuena narrowed his eyes and replied sharply, just do as I say. In business, the initial investment must be large in order to have a steady stream of rich returns in the future. We can't lose this time against Eclipse Moon. And I also want to take this opportunity to find out the traitor in Blizzard City. Deng Yuen's eyes flashed with a sharp look. The more talented a mutant was, the greater the consumption of improving that mutant's strength will be, including the energy loss in the middle. It is no exaggeration to say that the resources consumed to improve the ability of a mutant of Liang Yu's level can even create 10 mutants at the level of the investigation team. This is the price of forcing growth. If it is not a true genius, being forcibly improved in this way will only overdraw its potential. But Deng Yuena was not worried at all. He knew Liang Yu's will and body had been tempered by thousands of hammers. The very next day, inside Zhang Yi's villa in Area A, he invited young Xin Xin to an early breakfast. This was mainly to pick her brain. Obviously, Feng Guangyuanjin was a very difficult opponent to deal with. At the same time, he had an immortal body, a super melee ability, and the ability of a witch who could see the future. Putting these conditions together, it was so strong that it was suffocating. However, as long as the ability exists, there must be a way to deal with him. Fortunately, Eclipse Moon is in a state of rest now, so they still have some time to prepare. Xin Xin, the Eclipse group has disappeared for almost a week since the battle in Jiangning City. Can you guess what the Eclipse group is doing now? Young Xin Xin replied leisurely. 5 of them died in the last battle. Although from the result, they won a miserable victory and the Jiangnan region failed. But from the perspective of the strength of both sides, they may not have won this duel. The Jiangnan region has a deep foundation. The defeat of the God Squadron has other forces to mobilize. But Eclipse Moon can hardly get the troops to make up for it. So, she looked at Zhang Yi, her eyes flashing like dark stars. I guess they will definitely bring helpers when they come next time. Helpers? Will they be their companions from Neon? Although from the intelligence, Eclipse Moon belongs to the structure of the elite team and has no other companions. But as a landing faction, there must be other people in Neon who have the same idea as them. Seeing that Eclipse Moon has set off a huge wave in the Jiangnan region, maybe someone is tempted to follow them and try to get a piece of the pie. Yang Xin Xin explained calmly. It may not necessarily be from Neon, it could be any force. Since the advent of the Ice Age, most areas in the southeast have collapsed. Huashu country had been doing great compared with others. We have the world's top power and can maintain basic needs. But most of the areas in the southeast are small countries. They don't have the ability to deal with the huge natural power of the region, so they collapse. If I'm not mistaken, the southeastern region, including the southern sea area, is already in chaos. Private military organizations are even more numerous. Those vicious people may harass the border. It is also possible that they are moved by the people of Eclipse Moon and can probably be persuaded to invade together. Zhang Yi sighed softly. What I hate most are snakes, insects, rats and ants. They don't seem to have any killing power, but their numbers are huge and they are simply disgusting. The only good news is that those areas are relatively fragmented. First, the population is not large. Even the population of some small countries combined is not as large as that of Tianhai City. Second, their technology is relatively backwards. Therefore, in such areas, the possibility of producing high-level mutants is relatively small. While Zhang Yi was thinking about the next round of plans to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon, undercurrents were surging in Blizzard City, and no one was idle. Everyone knew that as long as they could defeat Eclipse Moon, they would be able to gain great prestige in Blizzard City, thereby increasing the power of their own faction. In response to this, Zhu Zhang convened the entire Blizzard City's senior personnel. The content of the meeting was the plan for the next encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon. Zhang Yi informed Xin Xin of this and his desire to bring her and Flower along. So the very next day, the conference room of the Combat Command Center was particularly lively, with hundreds of people, including all the prominent people in the entire Blizzard City. Not only Zhu Zhang, Tu Yunlai, and the others, but also some middle and senior management personnel appeared there. This scale of the gathering was extremely rare in the history of Blizzard City. Zhang Yi appeared at the scene with Xin Xin and Flower. Zhang Yi found that there are obviously two lively circles in the venue. One circle is centered on Tu Yunlai, the head of the combat department. He's always in his military uniform, with half of his face covered. But that seems not to be the case in today's gathering. The other circle was the Samsara team circle headed by Gao Changkong. Both circles gathered quite a few people, who almost lowered their voices to discuss how to get a share of the spoils from Eclipse Moon. Minister Tu Yunlai, we will fully support you in this operation to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon. Your ability is obviously stronger than those investigation team leaders. If it weren't for this, why would they give you the most important task of defending Blizzard City? It's just that those investigation teams are more likely to become famous. They don't really think that you are weaker than them, right? This encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon is of great significance to the Jiangnan region. As a top combat force, you must take part to ensure the victory of the operation. Zhu Zhang must be convinced on this matter. Tu Yunlai was surrounded by several high-level officials of Blizzard City. Among them were the heads of the administrative department and the finance department, all dressed in their impeccable heavy clothes. Tu Yunlai didn't say much, but his expression wasn't his usual icy and cold demeanor either. He politely thanked everyone. As for Gao Changkong, he came with his deputy captain Ji Yushin and Gu Man. Compared with Tu Yunlai, he has more people in his circle. Gao Changkong is usually quite popular, even among the middle and lower classes of Blizzard City. He is friendly and never puts on airs. Captain Gao, you must bear the burden this time. I hope you can fulfill your mission and complete the task successfully. As long as you succeed this time, even if you are of humble origins, you can rely on this merit to rise to the top. With our recommendation, you may not be unable to enter the power core of Blizzard City in the future. Gao Changkong looked embarrassed. Everyone is joking. Gao Changkong, have no other ideas. As a soldier, my duty is to protect the safety and maintain the glory of the Jiangnan region. For this reason, I will ruthlessly wipe out any invading enemy. When he mentioned Eclipse Moon, his eyes were as sharp as a sword. The representatives of the factions around him who supported him were very satisfied with his attitude and nodded with a smile. But at this moment, Gao Changkong saw Zhang Yi not far away and greeted. Captain Zhang, long time no see. Long time no see, Captain Gao. Zhang Yi calmly greeted back. Zhang Yi and his companions found a section and took a seat. But the moment they did, Bailey Chongqing hurriedly rushed over with a smile. He placed an arm around Zhang Yi's shoulders affectionately and greeted. Hey Captain, why are you sitting here? It was clearly obvious that compared to Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai, who were popular, he did not look very impressive. Everybody likes to stir up trouble about something new, and nobody likes to rehash old news. Even though I am a mutant from an outer city and have assumed the position of captain of the Tengu team, I am not likely to be noticed by the bigwigs in Blizzard City. Sighing softly, Bailey Chongqing replied that it couldn't be helped. At any time, there will always be a strict hierarchy of contempt. As a mutant from an outer city, you are somewhat looked down upon in the eyes of most people in Blizzard City. You are even inferior to Gao Changkong, who climbed up from the bottom of Blizzard City. Really? Then let them see it as they please. With a nonchalant demeanor, Zhang Yi spread his arms helplessly as Bailey Chongqing took a seat right next to him. Zhang Yi raised a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth when he looked in Bailey Chongqing's direction. By the way, Bailey, who do you think is better fit to lead this mission? Bailey Chongqing grabs his chin, his eyes wandering between the two circles, looking at Tu Yunlai, and then at Gao Changkong, who was extremely popular, before sharing his thoughts. Both of them submitted letters of request to Zhu Zhang, hoping to lead this operation. But at present, it seems that the Samsara team has a much better chance, because the Yenyun army needs to defend Blizzard City and protect the safety of the top leaders. As the head of the Yenyun Guard, Tu Yunlai certainly cannot leave Blizzard City, although he's very strong, and has the ability to guide large-scale battles. Based on this, if I have to choose one between the two, I will definitely choose Gao Changkong. Yang Xin Xin suddenly chimed in and questioned coldly, "Are these the only two people you chose?" Bailey Chongqing was stunned for a moment. Then he saw Zhang Yi's meaningful smile and realized that he had overlooked him. But can Zhang Yi really be the leader of this operation? Bailey Chongqing laughed and stated nervously, "Zhang Yi, can you two please stop making such insinuations like that? You are not even the kind of person who wants to take charge." Bailey Chongqing knew Zhang Yi's character very well, and was convinced that his captain was not the kind of person who liked to fight for fame and fortune. If possible, Zhang Yi would rather lie dead at home than interfere in any tasks that did not concern him. Besides, he continued leisurely, "You are from an outer city, and I don't mean to look down on you, but you just simply cannot take the lead. Mainly because in Blizzard City, the xenophobia is very strong and particularly obvious at critical moments like these. Also, wasn't it the same in your Tianhai city at the beginning?" Zhang Yi simply folded his arms with a knowing smile and stated casually, "If you say so, then I guess that's it." Not long after, accompanied by his two entourage, Lan Xinqing and Sun Lushuan, Zhu Zhang appeared at the venue and took the center stage. Everyone immediately quieted down and greeted Zhu Zhang. He acknowledged this as everyone, especially Tu Yunlai and Gao Changkong, looked at him expectantly, waiting for him to announce the person in charge of the third encirclement and suppression plan. The power structure of Blizzard City will also change because of this, whether it was Tu Yunlai or Gao Changkong. Zhu Zhang began his speech and got straight to the point. First, he summarized the reasons for the failure of the previous two encirclement and suppression plans and did some self-examination. Then he mentioned the gains from the two encirclement and suppression missions. Anyway, I want to especially praise one person. That is Zhang Yi from Tianhai City. During the second encirclement and suppression mission, he single-handedly killed 4 members of Eclipse Moon and saved the face of the entire Jiangnan region. Because of this outstanding achievement, as well as Zhang Yi's personal courage and loyalty to the Jiangnan district, I've decided to form a new temporary investigation team named Tengu. It'll be the merging of the Black Robe team and the remnants of the Heavenly God team. And as the core, I appoint Zhang Yi as the team leader. As soon as these words came out, there was a lot of discussion. However, the expressions of the people were not too surprised. This news had long been rumored among the senior management. Everyone also understood that such a new force was indeed needed. In addition, Zhang Yi had experience in fighting against Eclipse Moon and had achieved excellent results. So it was reasonable for him to be the captain. But Zhu Zheng's next words made everyone feel that something was off, because he hadn't even mentioned Tu Yunlai and Gao Changkong, not once, but kept promoting Zhang Yi's personal outstanding deeds, calling him a rare genius. From now on, in order to keep the senior combatants confidential, we will no longer call Zhang Yi's name to the outside world. Instead, we will call him by the code name Chaos. Similarly, the elite members of other combat units will all be called by their corresponding code names to the outside world. Those who can have code names are all elites, such as members of the investigation team and those above the captain level in the Yenyun army. It's just that, in the past, these code names were only used in the process of performing tasks. However, the Tengu squad is only a temporary organization, but a special code name was applied for Zhang Yi. Moreover, the word "from now on" sounds unusual. Everyone listened to Zhu Zheng's tone and realized that the situation was a little subtle. Bailey Chongqing, who was sitting next to Zhang Yi, was totally shocked to his core and looked in Zhang Yi's direction. No, it's impossible, right? Zhu Zheng really wants Zhang Yi to take the lead in this mission? He had just thought of this when Zhu Zheng's cold tone confirmed it. Based on my careful consideration, in the next operation to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon, the Tengu squad will be the leader. The Samsara squad will be responsible for cooperating with the Tengu squad. And Zhang Yi will have the highest command on the battlefield, while the Combat Command Center provides battlefield guidance. As soon as these words came out, the whole venue exploded. Although they were all high-level officials, they usually don't lose their composure in front of Zhu Zheng's high-level authority. But the current situation surprised everyone and was beyond imagination. What? The commander-in-chief of this operation is a mutant from outside Blizzard City? What qualifications does he even have? Whether in terms of popularity or tactical skills, can he really be compared with Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai? This must be a joke, right? But since Zhu Zhang made this decision, he must have thought it through carefully. And it seems that Zhang Yi is indeed extraordinary. After all, he was able to kill 4 members of Eclipse Moon, and his strength is not bad. But if he is asked to command people like Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai, can he do it? Someone amidst the crowd suddenly pointed out the main reason questionably. Wait, is Zhu Zheng worried that Gao Changkong or Tu Yunlia's achievements will shock their master? So he chose a mutant from the outer city who is easy to control to take on important responsibilities? But if he is not capable enough and the third encirclement and suppression operation fails, the problem will be serious. Everyone had their own thoughts. Tu Yunlai was stunned, but soon regained his composure. And as for Gao Changkong, he also did the same as his deputy captain Ji Yushin stated indignantly. Who the hell is he to be our commander? Gao Changkong looked in his direction and spoke calmly. Commander Zhu Zhang must have his reasons for making this decision. And I've also heard that Zhang Yi has unique ideas. Gao Changkong has a good relationship with Bailey Chongqing, so he has heard about some of Zhang Yi's deeds. But as the scene shifted to Bailey Chongqing's side, he was absolutely mind-boggled. And when he looked in Zhang Yi's direction, then at Zhu Zhang on the stage, he realized that Zhang Yi had known everything for a long time. Zhang Yi was not surprised and looked calm. Too calm, actually. No wonder you agreed to accept the position of captain of the Tengu squad. Turns out that Zhu Zhang promised you such a big benefit. Once the mission of encircling and suppressing Eclipse Moon is successful, the reward Zhang Yi will get will undoubtedly be huge, and he will also be able to become a hero in the entire Jiangnan region, and possibly the entire Huashu country. The stories about him will be legendary and widely circulated among the people. Ask yourself, if there is such an opportunity in front of you, Bailey Chongqing, wouldn't you rush to seize it? Zhu Zhang looked at Zhang Yi in the audience and invited him to come up to the stage and say a few words. Zhang Yi stood up and confidently walked to the front stage under the gaze of everyone. He took the mic, and as his eyes swept over everyone present, he spoke calmly. Without further ado, I will do my best to capture these evil Ronin and safeguard the dignity of the Jiangnan region and the entire Huashu nation. It is our duty to restore the glory of the nation. Oh, and by the way, please call me by my title or code name in the future instead of my real name. Zhang Yi thanked everyone after these polite words and calmly walked down the podium. At this special moment, Zhu Zhang did not waste time talking about too many things, so the meeting ended quickly. But before that, he asked Zhang Yi to stay for a moment. He had something to discuss with him in private. However, this discussion was nothing more than to ask him if there was anything he didn't understand. Also, Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai will be tasked to support him. But his next appointment as captain will be announced to the whole city, and he will be publicized as chaos. However, Zhang Yi also needs to contact the members of his team and seize this time to train. Of course, the most important thing was to take advantage of this time to get familiar with his team members and make them believe in him. Zhang Yi understood this and nodded slightly. But what he was much concerned about was Eclipse Moon. Had there been any news of them? Zhu Zhang shook his head. After they disappeared, there has been no movement. We even suspect that they left the mainland from the harbor and went back to Neon to recruit soldiers. Zhang Yi frowned slightly. Why do you think they returned to Neon? Zhu Zhang calmly replied that Neon was their base camp after all. Also, based on the appeal of the landing faction and relying on what they have done here, they can make good argument and can also probably recruit more Ronin to return to the Jiangnan area. Zhu Zhang placed a hand on Zhang Yi's shoulder and patted him with expectations in his eyes. We will make you a hero, and the hopes of the people of the entire Jiangnan region will be placed on you. So you must do your best. You must go all out and don't put too much pressure on yourself. When necessary, Tu Yunlai and the Yenyun troops will also be dispatched. Zhang Yi's pupils dilated as he stammers a little. Wait. Even the Yenyun guards are going to be dispatched. The Yenyun guards are the most important force that defends Blizzard City. Once they leave, the city's defense will be greatly reduced. It seems that this time, Zhu Zhang has really made up his mind. Zhu Zhang nodded confidently. There are no enemies inside the region, and the enemies are all outside. I have made comprehensive preparations, so you don't have to worry about this. Zhang Yi naturally didn't give two shits about Blizzard City. However, if the Yenyun guards led by Tu Yunlai, the Samsara squad and the Tengu squad were all participating in this operation, then it can be said that the armed forces dispatched this time around were at least 3 times stronger than the last time. And according to Zhang Yi's analysis of the combat power of the combined teams, Zhu Zhang is sparing no effort in going all out, and there was almost no possibility that the Jiangnan region will fail in this battle. Zhang Yi nodded slightly, feeling relieved. He replied that he understood his task and will get them done. Zhu Zhang then waves him off. Okay, you can go ahead. The people of the city and I are looking forward to your performance. The scene shifts to the lounge on the first floor of the combat center. At this time, Gao Changkong was sitting on a sofa with his girlfriend Guman next to him, and Bailey Chongqing opposite them. As for his deputy captain Ji Yushin, he had always had an impatient personality, so he left to cool off. When he found out that the leader of this operation was not Gao Changkong but Zhang Yi, he was quite resentful. Bailey Chongqing waved this off as a minor inconvenience and stated with some regret, "In terms of ability, you are more suitable than Zhang Yi to be the commander this time." But he did not say the second half of the sentence because that involved some complicated things inside Blizzard City. Bailey Chongqing had no words of comfort other than an apology. He did not look down on Zhang Yi. It's just that, as a commander, Zhang Yi was indeed not as good as Gao Changkong. And in all honesty, Zhang Yi himself admitted this. However, Gao Changkong smiled as if he didn't care about it, and even raised his cup of hot water cheerfully like he was proposing a toast. But it's just that the fleeting regret in his eyes could not be perfectly concealed. Anyway, since it is the headquarters' decision, there must be a purpose. Zhu Zheng can't joke about the safety of the region. No matter who becomes the commander-in-chief, I will do my best to cooperate. Bailey Chongqing smiled, raised his cup of hot water and replied excitedly, "I agree. It's just a title after all. When we really get to the battlefield, Zhang Yi will have to rely on you." Guman's phoenix eyes showed annoyance. Inwardly, she and everyone else knew this title was very important. Leading a large army and defeating the Neon Ronin organization head-on, such a reputation can allow a person to quickly rise in Blizzard City, gain a high reputation, and have the opportunity to enter the core power circles. Bailey Chongqing's face was a little helpless as he tried to explain. "All I can say now is that Zhang Yi is not a person who is greedy for fame, and he has no interest in joining Blizzard City." Gao Changkong smiled slightly and added, "Perhaps this is the reason why Zhu Zheng chose him." Bailey Chongqing took a sip of his cup of hot water as he kept track of time. And according to it, he was certain that Zhang Yi should be coming down soon. Right on cue, Zhang Yi arrived at the meeting area with Yang Xin next to him. Bailey Chongqing was surprised to see Yang Xin joining the gathering, but immediately dismissed any significant consequences. She was going to be a temporary team member after all. He got up slightly and waved the two over with a cheerful smile. "Hey Zhang Yi, over here." Zhang Yi saw Gao Changkong and Guman and wondered what their attitudes were. Gao Changkong must be disappointed, and he might also hold a grudge against him. Zhang Yi had made sufficient preparations, but since he was going to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon, communication with the leader of the Samsara squad was unavoidable. He walked over and greeted them with a smile. "Captain Gao. Miss Gu, nice to see you again." Seeing Zhang Yi, Gao Changkong smiled politely and extended his hand. "Zhang Yi, congratulations on becoming the captain of the Tengu squad. We will be partners in the future. Please give me your guidance." Zhang Yi saw that Gao Changkong's attitude was not bad, so he naturally shook hands with him. "I am only a temporary captain, and I will step down after completing the mission. So it seems Captain Gao would rather give me more guidance on the next action." Gao Changkong then asked if Zhang Yi was free today. He wants to treat him to a meal, and in addition to that, they can talk about future cooperations. Hearing this, Zhang Yi certainly had no reason to refuse. Anyway, at this time in Blizzard City, overly luxurious restaurants have been banned, and the reason was to save food and resources. So Gao Changkong treated them to a nice restaurant in Area A. After exchanging pleasantries, they ordered some food. Meat was relatively cheap there, but it was almost impossible to eat a fresh one. Vegetables were only dehydrated, and they need to be steamed before cooking, although the taste changes completely. Gao Changkong briefly explained his purpose. "I have already heard about Captain Zhang from Zhu Zheng. Among the mutants of Eclipse Moon, there are some who can predict the future, but Captain Zhang can block the other party's ability. So, I hope to use this to formulate a battle plan. Because I believe that the most important reason why the Celestial God team was defeated by Eclipse Moon is that the other party knew all their actions. I don't want to repeat the same mistake, so I would like to ask you to give me support in this regard when I take action." Zhang Yi was pleased when he heard this, and stated that he was not a mutant who was good at attacking. "The commander asked me to lead the team only because I am more stable and I can block the other party's predictions. So when we fight Eclipse Moon, we will have to rely on you in terms of combat power." Gao Changkong smiled slightly. Speaking of which, the premise of cooperation is mutual understanding, and we are not clear about each other's abilities. So let me introduce my abilities first. My ability is reincarnation. I can reincarnate between life and death. Every time I die, I will return to a period of time before my death. As for the time period, I will like to keep it a secret. In short, generally speaking, I can't be killed, and I can collect intelligence in advance through reincarnation. This can help me turn danger into safety and effectively collect information about my opponents. After listening to this, Zhang Yi actually let out a long sigh on the spot. Another person with the ability that can't be killed. Gao Changkong smiled and looked at Zhang Yi. My ability, in a sense, can actually circumvent the other party's prediction. I have studied the other party's ability. Although there are factors of causality in it, the range of her prediction is limited. Otherwise, the female ninja, Naru's Hanakyo, would not have been killed by Deng Shintong, and the other 4 people would not have been killed by you. So, the other party's ability is not omniscient and omnipotent. If I encounter them, I can use the first opportunity to test their abilities and tactics, then trigger reincarnation, and then change the way of playing to deal with it. Zhang Yi keenly discovered something. Your ability can only be triggered once. Gao Changkong nodded approvingly. Good insight. Starting from the timeline that triggers the reincarnation, until the second time the same timeline is reached, this is the cycle. My ability can only be activated within 1 day. He gave an example. If I activate my ability at this moment, 12:51 noon, then the next time I activate my ability, I need to wait until the timeline comes to the present again, and then another day, and then tomorrow at 12:51 noon before I can use it. These things are all recorded in the district. I have no need to deceive you, so please believe me. Also, there are not many people who can trigger my ability, so I often trigger it actively. Zhang Yi nodded in understanding. This is to say, even if he doesn't use his ability, he is very strong. Anyway, Zhang Yi briefly introduced his abilities, avoiding any detailed explanation, and his hidden skill, Spear of the Void. He only gave the information the Jiangnan district had already collected. After all, it's not like Gao Changkong hadn't concealed something from him. Gao Changkong raised his cup for a toast. I hope we can cooperate well and complete this mission together. The Eclipse group must be eliminated at any cost. Only by eliminating them can there be peace. Zhang Yi nodded. I have the same idea. This meal was Gao Changkong's statement to Zhang Yi. It proved that he didn't feel resentful because he lost the initiative to act. It was not only for Zhang Yi to see, but also for the top leaders of Blizzard City. After dinner, Zhang Yi took Yang Xin Xin back to the villa. Sitting on the sofa with Yang Xin Xin next to him, Zhang Yi was a little solemn. And this made Yang Xin Xin ask curiously, Big brother, do you have any opinion about Gao Changkong? Zhang Yi smiled faintly and replied calmly, I'm quite interested in his abilities. Zhang Yi leaned against the sofa and stated curiously, I was just wondering, how far back in time can his death is reincarnation ability be restarted? If he can go back 3 days every time he is reborn, then he will have 3 times as much time as an ordinary person. 7 days ago it was 7 times, 10 days ago it was 10 times. In this way, as long as he keeps using this ability, he will get many times more time than others. In addition, since he can know the future trajectory in advance, there are countless things he can do. Even if it is just to improve his strength, his growth rate will be frighteningly fast. Zhang Yi also somewhat understood why Gao Changkong was able to climb from the bottom area step by step to where he was today. But at this time, Yang Xin Xin's mouth curled up slightly. She tilted her head slightly and asked mischievously, But, big brother, do you really believe the ability Gao Changkong described to you? Zhang Yi was slightly startled when he heard this. Gao Changkong will definitely not reveal everything to me. But there is no point for him to lie to me about his ability. After all, his ability is not a big secret among the top leaders of Blizzard City. Yang Xin Xin's black gemstone eyes turned. I just feel that his ability is very strange. Do humans really have the ability to change the timeline of this world? This question brought Zhang Yi's thoughts back to the time when he was reborn. Zhang Yi nodded. Maybe it's really possible. Yang Xin Xin didn't understand why Zhang Yi was so sure. But, according to what he said, he can distort time at will and constantly change history within the reincarnation cycle of a day. This is no longer the realm of humans, but the realm of gods. Yang Xin Xin said slowly. Zhang Yi was silent for a long time before stating curiously. Maybe his upper limit is not just a Delta-level mutant. But who knows? He shrugged his shoulders. It is difficult to verify the truth of other people's superpowers, especially those related to the time domain. After all, Zhang Yi had reincarnated before, so there was a high possibility that he was one of them. However, at present, he has not discovered the unlocking code of this ability in this aspect. And he wasn't stupid enough to die again for experimental purposes. That would be too much. Anyway, there is no need to consider this issue now. It wouldn't matter in the long run whether Gao Changkong's ability is the same as he described. Anyhow, I am the captain of the Tengu team, and I need to meet with my team members. I also need to integrate the Black Robe team with the members of the God team for training to deal with the Eclipse Moon that may appear again at any time. We also need to go pick up Liang Yu in 3 days. I don't know how much Liang Yu can grow, but I'm quite looking forward to it. The scene shifts, and just like that, 3 days had passed. At the lounging room inside the Deng Garden, Zhang Yi and Xin Xin were waiting to meet Liang Yu after their separation. However, within the 3-day skip, the propaganda department of Blizzard City tailored a heroic image for Zhang Yi, who was born in poverty but had feelings and righteousness. His deeds, achievements, and current status were also publicized, and this soon attracted the attention of all the people in Blizzard City. As a result, Gao Changkong's aura of a civilian hero was weakened a lot. Anyway, as the two waited patiently, Zhang Yi tried to keep his face calm, but his eyes kept darting towards the door from time to time, revealing his inner tension and expectation. What will Liang Yu become? Will she improve to a deputy captain-level figure, or higher? Zhang Yi thought to himself with some expectation and some nervousness. Not long after, Liang Yu suddenly appeared at the scene with a marvelous sight that was very appealing to see. Apparently, her potential even exceeded Deng Shintong and Liao Honglei. But sadly, there weren't enough time to properly train her to her full potential. However, relying on her tempered physique and extraordinary will, Liang Yu endured to the end, and the transformation had greatly improved her physical functions. She was still the same as before, with heroic eyebrows raised, hair tied into a high ponytail, and a white tights wrapped around her body that was trained to the right degree. It seems that there has not been much change. Zhang Yi knew that her inner self must have become different and was delighted with this outcome.